bold journalism,
but Drew Hernandez is a strong-minded individual.
exposing lawlessness,
Drew Hernandez, who is ideological,
finding the truth,
and use the word Antifa.
This is what they do.
battling
They're
mainstream
liars. The woke mob, all they can do is lie.
These are the front lines.
Welcome to TPUSA Live. My name is Drew Hernandez, host of Frontlines. Here's what we have coming up on the live stream today. I have some exclusive numbers from Border Patrol showing just how many people are already crossing our southern border illegally. And thanks to President Biden, those numbers are about to skyrocket. Plus, we're celebrating Trans Day of Visibility, whatever the hell that is. After Frontlines, we'll send it over to the couch for TPUSA Live with Jon Root and your favorite contributors. They're talking about Fox News' newest contributor, who is pretty controversial in the conservative space. Then Jack Posobiec is discussing the shocking inflation warning from BlackRock on Human Events Daily. And then on Breakaway, Jon Root sits with one D1 swim coach who is speaking out about the unfairness Leah Thomas is bringing to the sport. And of course, the great Alex Clark is breaking down all the pop culture stories of the day, including some nasty rumors about what really goes on in our nation's capital. But as a reminder, Frontlines is now available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and other streaming services. Do not forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review right now to support us. Thank you so much. My name is Drew Hernandez, and you are now on the front lines. All right, America, breaking news. President Biden admin to drop Title 42 border restrictions in this upcoming May. According to the Associated Press, the Biden administration is expected to end asylum limits at the United States-Mexico border in just under 2 months. The original asylum restrictions were actually put in place under President Donald Trump to prevent COVID from spreading back in 2020. The White House is already admitting that they know that there will be a big, huge spike in people coming across the southern border, and Senator John Cornyn from Texas said Border Patrol agents have already told him, and I've corroborated this too, that they expect a tsunami of humans to cross the border. Homeland Security says they're expecting as many as 18,000 people crossing every single day. So I have my contacts as well in the Border Patrol. They don't like to go on record, but they still share this information because the American people deserve to know that this is not just a border crisis. This is literally an invasion. So to keep you guys up to date, here are some current numbers about maybe 4 days ago of what we're seeing at the southern border. So I'll give you guys a couple sectors. The way that they break up the southern border and even the northern border of the United States are sectors. You have Del Rio, Rio Grande, but I'm going to show you guys the main ones that are seeing the high amount of people coming over. Still right now in 2022, still happening. These are some of the numbers. The Del Rio sector, apprehensions, around 36,000, turnbacks, only 209. And gotaways, 20,000. That's the Del Rio sector in Texas. And then the Rio Grande Valley sector in Texas, 38,000 apprehensions, 4,000 turnbacks, 3,000 gotaways. Let's go to Arizona, the Tucson sector, apprehensions, 24,000 apprehensions, and 882 turnbacks, and 16,000 gotaways. Those are known and recorded. Arizona, again, the Yuma sector, apprehensions, 29,686, turnbacks, 246, gotaways, nearly 3,000. Now, there are other sectors as well. If you add up California, others in Texas, obviously Arizona, New Mexico. If you put the whole thing together as of right now, March, just a couple days ago, that's 186,000 apprehensions, 13,000 turnbacks, 57,000 gotaways, and unresolved detection, 2,000. That includes the northern border as well. This is right now in 2022, right here in March. This is where the southern border, it was worse in 2021. It's not getting any better. But now that they're going to pull back, now that they're going to nuke, I'm talking to some of these Border Patrol agents, and these guys, you know, my heart goes out to them because their jobs are just being absolutely decimated. Some of these people are just exhausted at the southern border. They're getting shot at the southern border from these cartels. These people get into shootouts with them. And what the federal government has done is essentially utilize the Border Patrol to become an Uber service for human smuggling operations for the cartels on the other side. That's a fact. You go down to Del Rio, you go down to the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, you go down to Yuma, you will see all of this happening in your own backyard. Talk to the ranchers as well. They know that all of this is true. And these numbers that I just cited to you, Border Patrol agents will tell me as well, this is just what we know about. This is completely out of our control. A lot of them say they're outnumbered because they actually are, because they're dealing with hundreds of thousands of people and these very well criminal cartel organizations that are making millions a day off of human beings. They're a commodity. Well, to make matters worse, a local Texas news outlet, Laredo Morning Times, shared footage you're about to see. It's actually from a few days ago, but the Texas Department of Public Safety is just releasing it now. It all started with a car chase in Webb County and ended in this fiery crash. And I'll give you an explanation of what's happening here. The dash cam footage shows the moments the officers broke into the car. Take a look what they saw.
Watch the tire. No. Get out.
So this human smuggler took Border Patrol on a high-speed pursuit, crashed the car. It's on fire. They're pulling out a bag, a duffel bag. That's a woman in that bag. That's a human. Okay?
Holy crap.
These are what these criminal organizations do, these cartels. Now, there's an investigation underway as to what was exactly taking place right there. But, I mean, you go down to the southern border. This is, at least for me, this is nothing shocking to see. Some of the viewers that are watching might be saying, this is crazy. Is this actually happening? Yes, and worse. You see these human smuggling operations taking place at the southern border in Arizona. There are women being trafficked, raped on a daily basis. Little kids, pedophiles, cartels raping little kids and then bringing them over the southern border into the United States of America. And then the Border Patrol picks them up, ships them to some facility, puts them on an airplane throughout the night and takes them to wherever they claim to have family in the United States. It is an operation that is systematic, and the federal government is literally aiding and abetting it. People might say, dude, that sounds kind of crazy. No, that's literally happening. That is why I stopped calling this a border crisis so much. This is, yes, an invasion, but these are crimes against humanity. This is all a setup, and it's only going to get worse. If they're going to nuke Title 42, what's going to happen, and you're talking to some of these Border Patrol agents, you are going to see, listen, a lot of these people that claim asylum, they're not actually asylum seekers. They just use the terminology so that the American public sees it, and they have this kind of, compassion and sympathy. But you have these pedophiles that are coming from foreign countries. You have these human traffickers and human smugglers that are coming from foreign countries that take advantage of women. They kidnap women. They kidnap children. Even before they get to the Mexican southern border. This is nothing new, what I'm telling you guys. But once these people see stuff like this in the news, the Americans come out and say, we're going to put an end to Title 42. The restrictions are going to be lifted. It is going to be way easier for you to get into the United States of America. These people, these criminals, they lie. They start to lie about their identities. They lie about being families. Some of these people, especially predominantly males, they will kidnap children. They will kidnap even women to make it give an appearance that they're families. And the Americans, when you go down there, it's impossible to vet these people. It's impossible to actually tell if they're actually families or not. Yes, they do DNA testing, but there are hundreds of thousands of people at once. These Border Patrol agents are outnumbered. That's the story here. And the federal government knows it. It's all strategic. It's happening on purpose. It's all by design. It's meant to bring in millions of people because we all know that these are going to be future voters for the far left for decades to come. We all know this. This is why they mobilize these people. This is why they exhaust the Border Patrol. This is why they outnumber them. When you go down to the southern border, you can see this happening in real time. These Border Patrol agents, they cannot keep up with the influx of people that are coming on a daily basis, like clockwork. There are even cartel drop zones. You go to the southern border in Texas, even here in Arizona, down at Yuma at the Gap. That is literally a cartel drop zone. You could sit there and watch it. By the hour, every few hours, you see the cartels. They'll pull up in a van with a bunch of little kids inside of them and a bunch of men and a few women. They'll drop them all off. Right there, you could see it. If you're in the United States and you look out into Mexico, they drop them off. They walk them from Mexico straight through the southern border, and then the Border Patrol, with open arms, just takes them and puts them in a car and takes them to some facility and then puts them on a flight if they claim to be families or have family in that. This has been happening since this administration has been installed in the United States of America. And it's all systematic. It's all by design. My heart goes out to the Border Patrol agents. These guys are being put in the middle where they should not be put. Because what's happening here is you're taking millions of desperate people when you communicate this stuff like this, and they know that now is their time to get into the United States of America, but you're also going to have the pedophiles, the murderers, the criminals, these people that act like they are who they say they are. Oh, they're asylum seekers. No, a lot of these people really are not. A lot of criminals are taking advantage that now is the time where America's door is wide open at the southern border. You might say, well, how? How does this administration is fully aware of what's taking place at the southern border? You think that President Biden doesn't know about everything I'm telling you right now? About the criminal cartel that makes millions of dollars a day off of smuggling human beings like clockwork, like animals, stuffing them into semi-trucks, stuffing them into trains, stuffing human bodies into duffel bags like that video we just showed you? You think that the federal government doesn't know that this is happening? Of course they do. They very well know. And probably even more than me about how organized these criminal cartels really are. So you got to ask yourself, then why do they allow it? Number one, they don't care about these migrants. They don't care at all. They're sacrifices to their regime because we all know that they want millions of desperate people that are most likely illiterate, that cannot speak English, that probably can't even read. That's not offensive. You go down there, a lot of these people come from third world countries. They don't even know how to read. They barely know how to speak their own language. Of course, the far left is going to want to import millions of people that are illiterate to anything, that aren't going to question anything about the government, that are just being told that you could have everything and anything. Just come to America freely. We will take care of you and your family for generations to come. Of course, that's going to equal votes in the future for decades to come. These people know this. And by the way, we're talking about the far left here. The grifters, the ones that exploit minorities. They don't care about minorities. They've done this to the black community. The Hispanic and the Latino community is now the target. They know it. Why do you think? As of 2020, the highest non-white voting bloc is not black people, it's not Asians, it's Hispanics and Latinos. They know this. The far left knows this. So why do you think when they installed their regime in 2021 that all of a sudden they're importing millions of Latinos and Hispanics from third world countries? Why? It's by design. These people want power and control, and they're willing to sacrifice human lives. Women get raped. Children get raped. People go missing. They get kidnapped. They get murdered. But they don't care. They just want votes. That's all these people want. Before we get into our next story, I'm sure you've noticed meat at the grocery store is not getting any cheaper under President Biden's ridiculous policies. If you're looking to save money without sacrificing quality, then you need to check out Good Ranchers, okay? Right now, you need to provide for your family. President Biden is saying that, food shortages are coming. Their prices, Good Ranchers, on 100% American meat have remained affordable, and their quality beats the store every single time. Right now, you can save money, get steakhouse quality, and donate $50 to TPUSA by visiting goodranchers.com/TPUSA. With your purchase, you will donate $50 to TPUSA to help us do what we do here every single day and support American ranches in the process. Make your $50 donation today. Go to www.goodranchers.com/TPUSA to get the quality you've been missing. Food shortages are coming. Do not wait. Do it now. All right, let's continue. So here we are, Trans Day of Visibility. And even the White House is coming out. The Daily Wire reports the White House early trans surgeries, hormones are crucial for kids, teenagers who identify as trans. And the Biden administration is in lockstep with them. The Biden administration is not slowing down when it comes to their efforts to indoctrinate, sexualize, and now mutilate your children. Doesn't this sound crazy? We used to think this was a conspiracy theory, but now this is happening in real time, right before your very eyes. This is from the Daily Wire. Early transgender surgeries, hormone treatment, and gender affirmation is crucial for the health of our kids and teens who identify as trans and non-binary. That's the message coming straight from the President Biden administration. Also, according to the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health, this is what they say: gender-affirming care is a supportive form of health care and can include medical, surgical, and mental health services of trans and non-binary people. They go on to say, early gender-affirming care allows the child to focus on social transitions and increase their confidence. The White House also says these procedures, like surgeries, that includes bottom surgeries and upper body surgeries, it's hacking the human body of a child. It's insane. And hormones are important. These surgeries and hormones are important because they increase positive outcomes for children and adolescents. Do they really? Is that a fact? Take a listen to what President Biden said earlier to celebrate this day.
To everyone celebrating Transgender Day of Visibility, I want you to know that your president sees you. Jill, Kamala, Doug, our entire administration sees you for who you are, made in the image of God and deserving of dignity, respect, and support. But we know it's hard when there are those out there who don't see you and don't respect you. For example, the onslaught of anti-transgender state laws attacking you and your families is simply wrong. This administration is standing up for you against all these hateful bills, and we're committed to advancing transgender equality in the classroom, on the playing field, at work, in our military, in our housing and healthcare systems, everywhere, simply everywhere. Today, we're announcing even more steps, but there's always more work to do to end the epidemic of violence against transgender women of color and girls of color, to ensure transgender seniors can age with dignity, and to finally pass a bipartisan Equality Act, to help transgender persons around the world live free from discrimination and violence. Above all, to be there with you.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. Does anyone feel uncomfortable when President Biden is talking about watching your children and being there for your children? I don't know about you, but I don't think I would want President Biden watching my kids unsupervised. What does that even mean? President Biden's a weirdo. We all know that. But listen. Number one, does anybody actually believe he cares? Does that sound like someone that cares? Sounds like he's about to fall asleep, just like everything else he talks about. Just a shell, just a puppet, just there talking, reading a script. But this is what they do. They try and make you feel like you matter, like your life matters, like you're some kind of special person that gets some kind of special treatment, and the whole world is there to back you up. These people don't care. That's how these people get manipulated. But he brings God into it. You are made in the image of God. Makes no sense. So now that President Biden wants to bring God into this conversation, this self-proclaimed dedicated Catholic, let's have a conversation about that. If I am made in the image of God, then why do I need to mutilate my own body to just destroy how God made me? If I'm made in the image of God, why do I need to decimate how God created my body? Why do I need to change and alter and slaughter who God made me to be if I am made in the image of God? But this is what the far left does. They claim God doesn't exist. They claim that none of that is real. They claim that God is the religion of the white man, and it's just a myth for everybody to believe and to be controlled. Is it really? Then why is it that the far left always seems to try and dictate what God is, who God says he is, and what God says? If he's not real, then why are you guys putting God's name in your mouth? This is what they always do. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're on the left or the right. If you're going to sit here and speak for God, you better get it right. If I'm made in the image of God, I don't have to mutilate my own body to be accepted by anybody. I am wonderfully made. I don't need to mutilate my own body to further be accepted by anybody, even myself. This is why theology matters, because when you have these far-left politicians that come out and attempt to speak for God, they put themselves in the category of a false prophet. Why? Because if you are going to stand literally where a man or a woman should be shaking to stand, to speak for the Almighty God, you better get it right. And you cannot sit here and say that God gives a pass or that God wants anybody to mutilate their body after he has created them and they are fearfully and wonderfully made in his image. Why? What kind of God wants you to mutilate your body? What kind of God wants you to just completely mutilate who he's made you to be? Obviously, these people have psychological problems. Obviously, they need help. Obviously, they're mentally ill. And the key and the solution is not to praise them and cheer it on and encourage mental illness. No, we need to have real compassion, sit down with these people and explain to them there's something happening to you. You're being manipulated. There's a psyop being run right on you in real time. These people don't care. If you're made in the image of God, you don't need to slaughter your own body. You don't need to alter who God has made you to be. Listen, I take this very serious because you may not, but I do. When you have this far-left politician that is apparently the leader of the free world, a puppet telling you theology, this does matter. And we have to speak out against it because it's false. It's 100% false. It's a false sense of compassion. It's a false sense of care. It's a false sense of sympathy. We care so much about you. Oh my goodness, you have a mental illness. So you know what? We get behind you. We encourage you. We encourage you to mutilate your body. We encourage you to mutilate children. We encourage you. Yeah, those little babies that are made in the image of God, we encourage you to slaughter and mutilate them. What kind of God would say or command such a thing or encourage such a thing? Not Jesus Christ, I could tell you that right now. Not the God of the Bible, I could tell you that right now. But these people try to dictate who God is and what God says. It's false. It's 100% false. Do not fall for it. Do not fall for these people appearing to give an appearance of godliness, but they deny its power thereof. These people are false prophets. They speak on behalf of God falsely. It's not accurate. It's not God's voice. It's not what God is saying. Listen, I'm very aggressive right now because people believe this stuff. They believe that that's what God is saying. That is not what God is saying. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. There's a psyop being run on you. God doesn't need you to mutilate your body to be accepted. That's not how it works. But this is what these people are doing, and they bring God into it. As if God is some kind of pedophilic child molester that just wants children to be mutilated in their bodies. It's perverse. That's what it is. We're preaching today, bro. That's where we're at. But these are the types of people that I'm going to show you right here that get manipulated. These are the people in video 12 that are being manipulated.
It's Trans Day of Visibility. This year, we have witnessed a swelling of state-sanctioned violence against the trans community. And now more than ever, it is imperative that we support, uplift, and celebrate trans women, trans men, and the broader trans community. On this Trans Day of Visibility, ask yourself, what are you doing to support and celebrate the trans people in your life? And the broader trans community.
Yeah, obviously that's a dude in a dress. Like, it almost comes off like they're trying to act like a woman. I'm very curious. I'm actually really curious for my ladies out there that are watching this right now. Do you get offended when a man does a miserable impression of a woman? and then hides behind the label of, I'm trans, I'm a protected class. I mean, not only are dudes like coming out and just destroying everything that women have for themselves, whether it's women's sports, politics, education, the whole list, the whole thing goes on, right? But do people get offended when you see stuff like this? Like, is that even genuine? That person's putting on a very bad act. I don't know. I've seen some people that actually act a little more convincing like women, but you got to ask yourself, yes, some of these people are mentally ill. They've lost their minds. They need to be counseled. They need to be talked to. Because if I came out and started identifying as a bicycle, you would probably laugh at me and think that I'm crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. There's something psychologically off there. But at least you could, put on a better act if you're going to try and act like a lady. I mean, you got to ask yourself these questions. Are these people even real, or are some of these people just grifting? It's a pretty bad impression. But here's another trans person calling themselves ugly and spitting all over camera. I don't even know. Let's run that.
I am a trans man. I am indigenous. I am two-spirit. I may even be ugly. But dear Creator, I'm here. And you're just going to have to get used to it.
I don't know, man. Listen, they said it, not me. She said it, not me. She said she's ugly. I didn't say it. She said it in the video. I didn't say it. She said it herself. Listen. But notice the words that they use. She's all spitting all over the camera. It's all disgusting. It's just, you know what I mean? It's just like, come on, get yourself together. At least present yourself a little better, right? But notice how they use certain words. Talking to the Creator. And, I'm here now and you're just going to have to deal with me. This is why I tell you, theology does matter. Because at some point, people always bring God into this. And you see these videos, you see this lace. This is some kind of spiritual attack on humanity. It is an attack on God himself because God's creation is being attacked. We are made in the image of God. That is what this is all about. Why do you think they want to dehumanize you? Why do you think they want us all genderless? Why do you think they want to invert, pervert everything that God has designed? Biological male, biological female, straight marriage. That is by God's design. These are institutions that are heavenly. They don't come from man. Marriage does not come from man. That is God's institution. Biology does not come from man. That is God's institution. It cannot be changed. It cannot be altered. That's when you start perverting what God has ordained. Biological males, biological females. Sound like hate speech right now, doesn't it? Why? Because I'm telling the truth. The far left loses their minds when you start talking like this. When we begin to forsake a standard of morality within our own hearts, especially in a society, you begin to lose your mind, you begin to lose your morality, and you begin to lose your society. There's no getting away from it. There's no getting away from anything that I'm saying right now. Because you speak like this before it happens, you sound like a bigot. You sound like you're spouting out hate speech. You sound like you just hate these people. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I don't want to see these people go down this road. I don't want to see a child get mutilated. I don't want to see people diseased because they're living hypersexualized lifestyles with multiple partners. That's exactly what happens. I don't want to see that happen to anybody, especially children. This is why in love I come out and say no, 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 no. And anybody in their right mind should not want to live in a depraved society. It's getting closer and closer to just seeing it happen in open real time, which you are to an extent. We've opened up this country to absolute depravity, sexual immorality. We've opened up this country entirely. So does it make sense to you why now we're seeing Disney and we're seeing the far left defend a kindergartner's teacher's right to sexually groom a child without the parents knowing? It's creepy when you hear these people like, oh, my children. If I want to talk to my children about anything gay, I should be able to. If I want to talk to my children about sex or whatever. I should be able to. This is what a depraved society begins to look like, where now you have open pedophilia being normalized. Look what's happening possibly to our Supreme Court as well. Can't get around it. You can't get away from it. It is what it is. God is always right, and he always wins in the end. My name is Drew Hernandez. These are the Front Lines. TPUSA Live starts right now.
Amen, Drew. Thanks a lot. But hey, everyone, once again, welcome to TPUSA HQ in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. This is what we're covering on TPUSA Live. First, Arizona passes voter ID, Caitlyn Jenner joins Fox News, and so much more in the daily briefing. Next, we'll discuss the Biden administration endorsing same-sex surgery for minors. Crazy stuff. Then, the Biden administration also makes some woke policy changes on Transgender Visibility Day. And, of course, President Biden's just been a wreck. So we're going to cover his address today as well. After, we'll take you through another edition of Professor Watchlist. And finally, a medical student jabs a kid for mocking her pronouns. We'll break that all down in one last thing. Buckle up. TPUSA Live from HQ starts now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Well, once again, happy Transgender Visibility Day. What a huge day, Drew.
I feel so seen.
But we got Drew Hernandez, Isabel Brown, MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis. So glad you're joining us
Andrea
here.
Hernandez.
Oh, excuse me, Andrea, and then we got Stephanie.
Yes.
And then we got
Isaac, why not?
Isaac. Joanna. And of course, you know me, Joanna.
Hey.
My goodness. We'll see you at YWLS. It's going to be a huge time for the transgender community. What a crazy world that we live in. I think you obviously just did a great job breaking down the specific agenda that's going on here with the left. You know, why do they want to groom kids? You know, you've done a great job breaking that down. We're going to do that throughout the show here, but we're going to start with some very, very good news. Obviously, the state of Arizona, I think, has done a pretty darn good job compared to some other states. I know when I moved out from California, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm able to live my life.
How about that?
I can go to church. There's some places I didn't have to wear a mask. And it just wasn't overly politicized here. It wasn't hyper political. But when you hear something like this, that Arizona is going to require voters to prove their citizenship and residency, obviously that's going to anger some people on the left because they got a specific agenda, especially with the midterms coming up. But we're doing everything we can here, it seems like, to protect election integrity because there was a lot of questions after this place went purple.
Yeah, you know, I think we talked about this the other day. Just generally speaking for Americans, I don't think that there's ever in modern history been such a high level of distrust in our public institutions across the board, be it elections, public health, I mean, you name it, pretty much every aspect of society that the government has its toe in, the American people are at least wary of, if not outright distrusting of it. And so I'm anxious to see how that affects voter turnout, how that affects participation in our elections. I think it could go one of two ways. Either everybody's going to be all in and really excited about making their voice heard again, or the distrust is going to be so significant that we all just decide it's not even worth it to begin with. I hope it's not the latter, but I love seeing states like Arizona take on initiatives like this because this is what it's going to take to reinstate that trust again.
Exactly. And then I want to get your take on this, Drew, too. So the bill requires voters in presidential elections to show proof of citizenship, like I mentioned, by providing a driver's license or a tribal ID or a copy of a birth certificate, passport, or naturalization documents. That's something that we've just been talking about, that President Biden, he deemed some laws in Georgia to be Jim Crow 2.0.
It's xenophobic, it's racist, it's offensive to me because I'm a person of color. I'm too stupid to figure out how to get a birth certificate. I'm too dumb to figure out how to get an ID. And I think that it's going to, do a lot of damage to me and my fellow black people. And my, Stephanie's not going to be able to figure this one out. You're done, dude. You of all people are done, bro. Like, you're not going to be able to figure this out. Like, if your life depended on it.
At least Black History Month was great, right?
I know, that's all it was for me. But now at this point, I feel marginalized completely. I mean, it's funny what you were saying, because basically what he was just describing was this little experiment they did at University of Berkeley. Oh my goodness. You want to talk about liberal utopia. And this guy went and asked all these different people, like, what do you feel about this racist law that's going about where these people are required IDs to vote. Oh, well, this is absolutely racist. I mean, they don't know how, black people don't know how to find a DMV. They don't know how to get themselves an ID. They don't know how to get on the internet to search this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, do you know how racist that is? Are you kidding me right now? So when it comes to this law is clearly racist.
Yeah.
And then Governor Doug Ducey, this is what he had to say about the law. He said, election integrity means counting every lawful vote and prohibiting any attempt to illegally cast a vote. It's nice that it's being done now, but you kind of wish there would have been some work done before the previous election.
Absolutely.
It feels like so oftentimes, I feel like, especially on the right, it's like, why are we constantly playing defense? Where it's like something goes haywire and it's like, oh, we got to fix it. There's stuff that could have been done before.
A long
because
time
obviously
ago.
you like to see it, but it's just like sometimes it's a little too late. Now people are paying more at the pump. I know we're going to talk about President Biden's address as well. Like there's ways that we could have fixed this earlier so Americans aren't hurting right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Another thing too is
Sean,
what in the world
was that you?
Wait a minute.
What's happening
That was interesting.
What just happened?
What?
What just happened? Why did that happen?
All these boys are so disgusting.
I do not stand for this at all.
Tomfoolery and shenanigans. And yes.
John! Stop!
Okay, I don't know what's happening here, and I also don't know why we have someone that's got a mental illness that's supposed to be talking to us about transgenders. So I guess we'll move past whatever sound is coming through here. This is
Drew!
Apologize for all of this. I'll put that on Stephanie.
Of course.
Brutal, because she's black.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah, I saw the meal that Stephanie had earlier, and it was like, if it's anybody, it's got to be Stephanie.
Definitely her, him.
But man, this is a tough transition. But this morning, Fox News said that Caitlyn Jenner is going to be jumping on as a contributor. And for me, I have some thoughts about this. I also have some thoughts about these sounds that are being thrown out through the live stream. I'll try to keep it together as best as I possibly can. This person you just saw on the screen is mentally ill.
Yes.
Caitlyn Jenner did not do anything in sports. Bruce Jenner did.
Yes.
And then now we have someone that's mentally ill trying to tell us why having mentally ill males competing in women's sports is wrong. You don't need Caitlyn Jenner to do that. And as long as you guys can get that sound out of your head, I can get a good response from here right now.
Well, I don't know, John. Keep it in control there. Maybe we'll be able to talk about this logically.
Take this one, Isabel. You're the woman.
Well, yeah, I'm the
You're not a
woman.
biologist.
Bruce Jenner's not the woman, so sure, as the only person in this conversation with a uterus, let's talk about that. I find this announcement just really interesting. It's specifically on Trans Day of Visibility, so obviously they did this today on purpose. Caitlyn Jenner says he's going to be on Tucker Carlson later tonight, I believe, or it was Hannity tonight, so there will be an appearance later today, which I'm sure we'll hear more about the announcement. But it just seems to me that pretty much universally media, be it for entertainment or for news purposes, seems to be going in a very specific direction for our conversations and in the news agenda. I don't know. That's just my immediate reaction.
And this is what the CEO had to say. I'll get your response here, Stephen, before we move to break. So the CEO, Suzanne Scott, said, Caitlyn's story is an inspiration to all of us. I don't know if you really speak for everybody, but she is a trailblazer in the LGBTQ plus community. She forgot IA. Watch out.
Well, the plus is there.
I guess. Yeah.
And the plus.
And her illustrious career spans a variety of fields that would be a tremendous asset for our audience.
I don't like this at all because once again, we're normalizing it. And it's one thing, because us on the right, we speak out against this type of stuff. We say that this is, gender identity disorder. This is a disorder, and these people deserve help and treatment.
Yeah, they do.
And the love that comes along with it, and the compassion. But it's hard to have love and compassion when you're forcing this on us and saying that us on the right have to now partake in this type of tomfoolery. And I'm not for this. I don't want to normalize this and make it seem like this is something that should be all across the spectrum from right to left. This is not the way it's supposed to be. This is disorderly, and I'm not having any of it.
And then not saying that like transgender people cannot be a contributor at news stations and everything. And I'm sure there's been time I've watched Caitlyn Jenner on Fox at times jump on and like
many times
have some pretty good takes on stuff. But I don't think we need to hear from someone like this to be the voice of this whole transgender craze. This is someone that is messed up themselves, and I think needs the truth. And if you want them to be the voice of this, I mean, I don't think that's a good thing for the right at all.
Well, I also think there's a total difference between announcing Caitlyn Jenner as a contributor for your network and making this huge press release statement on Transgender Day of Visibility and doing all sorts of content about it. Like, that seems different to me than just hiring someone to be a contributor for your network. There's a bigger story there.
Exactly. But we're going to take a quick break. I had a great conversation with the first Division I swim coach to openly say, I think what's going on with Leah Thomas being allowed to compete against women, especially in national titles, is wrong. So it's a great episode, just had and released on Sunday, but that's actually going to be played later today. Let's check it out.
When I spoke out the first time, most of my frustration was just with the NCAA and kind of the lack of leadership at the time, and kind of let's put this off on governing bodies. And then, governing bodies come up with a pretty, I think, viable solution, and the NCAA kind of said, well, we're not going to, we'll address that after the year. So, I think it's just kind of been, they have kind of protected one athlete at the expense of many, is really how a lot of us here feel.
Back to TPUSA Live, still trying to figure out what the heck happened during the daily briefing.
We're basically children because we think this is so funny.
Guess I was like the daily beefing. But we got Drew Hernandez. Excuse me. What's your transgender name today?
Andrea.
Andrea. It's Stephanie and Isaac.
Yep. Hello.
I'm Joanna. Welcome back to TPUSA Live. Obviously, there's been some major woke policy moves by the Biden administration, and the administration just released a series of documents encouraging gender reassignment surgery and hormone treatments for minors.
Yep.
So. These Health and Human Services documents regarding their position on the surgeries for transgender minors, we're going to throw that up on the screen for you. And it's so interesting to me, especially while we got Transgender Visibility Day. Transgenders here represent 0.6% of the population in America. That is about 1.4 million people, and that's from NPR. And I want to tell you what they released in these documents, what it said. So, what it calls appropriate treatments for transgender adolescents. This is their quote here. Top surgery to create male typical chest shape or enhanced breasts, and bottom surgery, surgery on genitalias or reproductive organs, facial feminization, or other procedures.
What are we defining as an adolescent? Did they describe that at all, or is it just kind of a loose?
Those are the vague terms they use.
Well, so we're theoretically talking, they said child and adolescent, our producers are saying in my ear. So like 10, 9, 11 years old, we're talking about genital mutilation and breast reduction or breast enhancement and even facial plastic surgery. To me, there's just such a massive difference between being an adult choosing to mutilate your body, being informed of what the procedure is actually like and what the side effects might be and what the outcome of that's going to be like in your life, and making an informed decision that way. I still don't agree with it, but there is a difference between an adult making that decision and a child who we agree in pretty much every aspect of society is not emotionally and intellectually mature enough to make their own decisions, to vote, to drink alcohol, to drive a car, and yet all of a sudden we're totally fine with adults pressuring them or leading them down a path of cutting off their genitals or their breasts. I mean, that is heartbreaking to me. No child is logically making an informed decision on that. It's impossible. But the culture we've created is all affirmative care. It's all, we can't even, as parents, as teachers, as healthcare practitioners, ask, are you sure you're transgender? You have to immediately say, yep, okay, let's get you transitioned, let's get the surgery scheduled, we're gonna make your life as easy as possible. At like 9 years old. What really gets me is that on social media, I do so many posts about this, and I talk about it a lot. I know we mentioned yesterday, John, the reason we talk about this every day is because if we can convince an entire generation of kids that their gender, the most inherent thing about them, is not real, we can convince them of anything.
Exactly.
So obviously, we need to keep talking about this. But I post about this all the time, and the number of comments that I get on TikTok, especially from people that are like, this is a conspiracy, nobody's talking to kids about this, nobody's encouraging kids
Literally, you have the
to go
Biden
through these
administration,
surgeries.
the
The
top
president
down.
of the United States is saying, hey kids, you're a child, let's cut off your penis. Let's do it.
And then he actually had a message today, President Biden, talking about Transgender Visibility Day. That's why we talk about this. We're going to show you that video right now.
Above all, to be there with you. To parents of transgender children, affirming your child's identity is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep them safe and healthy. To any transgender American who's struggling, please know you're not alone. To parents and children alike, please ask for help and know this. You're so brave, you belong, and we have your back. God bless you all. Be brave.
It's concerning.
There's that word again, affirming. And by the way, if we really had people's backs, why are we putting kids through these surgeries that fundamentally alter their body and their hormone structure and make young women infertile by the time they're 12 years old, and then if they want to change their mind later, they can't? Why are we doing that?
This is sick.
Like you said too, it's like might as well just start putting kids behind the wheel of cars as well. Let them
Let
vote.
them vote, let them smoke cigarettes, let them do drugs.
Just,
why not?
and that's where going back to the swimming championships, a lot of the focus was on Leah Thomas, but a lot of people weren't talking about the transgender swimmer from Yale. So a biological female that now says they're a male and actually had that top surgery and swam topless getting ready for the finals on the final day of the swimming championships. It breaks your heart to see that kind of stuff, that not only do you have some mental disorder, but if you really feel this way, this is what they're telling you, that you need to mutilate your body so you can fool yourself even more that you're not the gender that you were born as.
You do see it as like this really serious psyop that's being run on children and the youth right now, because have you been seeing all those protests in high schools of kids in Florida, like hundreds of kids protesting the "Don't Say Gay" bill? It's I do wonder, do they know what they're doing? Do they know?
No clue.
I do wonder, think about it, right? If I'm a kid and I think something looks cool, it's like, whoa, I can just change my body. That's awesome. And it'll make me famous on TikTok overnight. And I'm protected.
And it's
that's
not like
really
you're like a Mr.
People.
Potato Head where you can just take this stuff off and then put it back on.
That's what I'm saying is the brain
It's
doesn't
just
fully
potato
develop.
head now,
Oh, excuse
by the
me,
way.
sorry.
I don't think they have Mr. and Mrs. anymore.
So insensitive of me.
But that's what I'm saying is the brain doesn't fully develop between 22, 24,
25,
right? 25 years old. So it's these kids are being manipulated. They don't even realize what this really is going to do, and the parents, that's what I'm saying. It's the parents, these parents, these woke millennials that want to do this to the next generation. It is perverse.
I don't even think it's them wanting it, though. And I'm sorry for cutting you off, Stephen, but I was reading about this in depth with Abigail Schreier's book. If you guys haven't read that, Irreversible Damage book by Abigail Schreier, fantastic. Literally best book I've ever read. I could not put it down in the matter of a few hours. She was interviewing most of these parents it was all girls deciding they were non-binary or trans when they were teenagers in high school. And the parents overwhelmingly were liberal voters. They were really excited about liberal policies. They weren't insane socialist leftists, but generally were pretty approving of the pride movement and the gay movement. But they found it interesting that their child identified as trans because never in their child's life had there been any remote signs or symptoms of their child not identifying with the gender that they were born with. And so they were kind of wary about this, but because they were so accepting of the movement, they wanted to do the right thing, and they were told their kids would commit suicide if they didn't go along with it. And so they were like, okay, fine, I have to do it. And then 10 years later, every one of them wakes up and they're like, what have we done? Our daughter now wants to be our daughter again, and this is just so horrible. But it's not that we wanted our kid to mutilate their body. We protested this every step of the way, but every other aspect of society told us our kid was going to kill themselves if we didn't go along with this. And so I don't even think parents are even fully aware on their part what affirmation and affirmative care actually means for their kid. It's really sad. Everybody just has the wool pulled over their eyes and nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah, if you're a parent and you do this, whether you want it or not, you're disgusting.
Yeah.
Your kid should be taken from you.
Absolutely.
Period.
It's child abuse. This is child abuse. I mean, you look at this, these kids are being groomed.
Yeah,
I mean,
they are.
And at this point in time, it's from the top down, right? All the way up from the presidency, all the way down to, you know, society and culture, and I mean, every facet of society. You saw these woke Disney execs talking about, you know, they want to make half the characters, you know, LGBTQ by a certain period, a certain time frame. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, you are not hiding anymore. You are out in plain sight. You do not care, and it's all just a way to groom our children and take them from our clutches as parents and to put it in their clutches and their care so they can twist them.
And I think a lot of this is an attack on men. So you see so much, we get so up in arms about toxic masculinity. And where it's like, if you show that you're a strong man, that's almost just like, no, we don't need
You're the
that.
worst thing.
They want to feminize men.
Yeah.
They already have.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that. Like, there's like this many strong men figures publicly in
And
America.
then the potential for strong men in the younger generation, that's just not going to happen
race.
because you're feminizing them.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to get good leaders anymore. And then from the world stage to everyone's laughing at us.
Yeah. Of course they are.
Everybody's in there.
You look ridiculous.
You see with us in the education system, we were already falling behind in so many ways. And now look at the curriculum that's built now. They're just like, I am going to affirm you in your gender dysphoria, and maybe we're going to take a backseat when it comes to math, reading, and science. Like we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Also, we're not going to teach you the real science.
Right.
And it's terrifying to see where kids could potentially be going. And obviously for us, it's like, I know for me, when I become a parent, I'm going to make sure my kid knows that
right.
you're a boy or you're a girl.
Is that simple?
Don't get me any of that nonsense. Also, that kid's not going to be on TikTok for a while. But just think about our education system right now, like what they're focusing on. It's indoctrination. It is not helping us on the world stage. It's not helping build these kids into careers where they could really make a difference in their community, in their family. And
Could you guys imagine if we did this affirmative care concept for any other mental disorder?
Thank you.
Like, what if schizophrenia, or even just like being suicidal? Simple. What if we affirmed every teenager who had suicide concepts and thoughts running around in their head all the time and said, that's how you feel. We're totally on board with you. We're going to support you in every way you can to make sure you achieve that goal. We talk all the time about how the LGBT community has the highest suicide rate of any community ever on earth in human history. We're basically doing that. We're affirming suicide, essentially, which is horrible.
And you know who they blame? They blame
the people who push back.
Like us. They blame people just like, I can't believe you wouldn't just accept us. Like we're the people that are calling for violence. We're the hateful people. It's like, no. Like,
we're trying to stop it.
I want to save somebody's life, literally.
Yes. Exactly, and I feel like that's what's been so interesting, especially over the last month. With I think obviously the Leah Thomas situation just like lit the fire on both sides. And here it's just like, I don't want anybody to harm themselves. I don't want them to harm themselves in this idea of like, I want to be a different gender, so I'm going to do whatever I can to harm myself to look like that.
Yeah.
And then now you just look, there's such a mental disorder that they just don't even want to be in this world anymore. And it's not because of people like us telling them the truth, because there's a lot of people that are telling them the truth in love.
Yeah,
there definitely are some people that are just like, I can't believe you'd talk to the alphabet people. I can't believe you'd even have a conversation with Leah. It's like, no, you need to.
That's how you bridge
give them the truth, and hopefully that's why there's times where you just kind of hope there's people in circles and in education to where you send your kid off to school and you're like, I hope they're not just going to indoctrinate this kid and just push this stuff on them that could have irreversible damage.
Well, that's what's happening.
No pun intended. Read the book.
Boom. It's so good. But hey, we're going to get this message from our friends at Patriot Mobile, and we will be right back.
Yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47.
Abortion, I salute you! Women, if you need an abortion, get one! You said police defund!
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on to the next generation. Activate freedom. Join Patriot Mobile.
Activate freedom.
I wish I had a lightsaber.
Once again, happy Transgender Visibility Day. Huge day for our country. Wow. Thanks so much, President Byron. What a guy. He also had an address today talking about, like, why are the gas prices so high and what are we going to do about it? Because everyone's looking to the top down. How are you going to respond to this? How are you going to make sure that gas prices at the pump are okay? Because I know I was reading this stat that basically, I think it's just about $5,200 more that you are spending this year compared to last year.
On gas alone or on everything?
Just on everything, inflation, gas,
thank
all
God.
that stuff. So if you are not...
Still, it's all, I mean, I'm like not ready to handle that.
Me neither.
So, I mean, honestly, if you haven't gotten a raise at work,
yeah,
like
you're taking a hit.
You were taking a hit on behalf of President Byron. So when he spoke to the people today, the administration said they're going to release 1 million barrels of oil each day for the next 6 months from the U.S. reserves, and amid those high gasoline prices. He also had some interesting things to say about people complaining about this. Obviously, he put the blame on Putin again, and the people that are complaining said, you know what? Get an electric car. You constantly hear that from them. They're pushing this whole green thing. Check out this video from the address.
That's a really important question, and there's no firm answer to it. But prices already came down when it was announced ahead of time that Biden was going to release so much energy from so many barrels of oil from the SPRO. They're already come down. My guess is we'll see it come down, continue to come down. But how far down, I don't think anyone can tell. And there's going to be a slight delay because if you go out there and you're a gas station and you purchased X amount of gas at a certain price.
And you see at times too where he doesn't take any sort of blame at all, and he's gonna deflect in a lot of different ways, and then he's always gonna throw it on the private sector. You know, it's like if only these oil and gas companies, you know, weren't so worried about themselves, they could do something and lower those gas prices. It's smoke and mirrors, and it's honestly been effective for still some people. Like, I don't understand why the approval ratings aren't like 10%.
Thank you.
With everything that's going on.
Exactly.
Crisis
Well,
after
you
crisis.
can't always
It's never
trust
going to go all the way
polling,
down.
but yeah.
It's never going to go that low. But in general, like, I don't know why people still support this, because your vote went straight to higher gas prices and having a less valuable world and less money in your pocket.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, they believe the lies. They believe that it's Putin's fault. You know, they believe that the reason why these gas prices are so high is because, you know, they've successfully painted Putin as the bad guy as to why, but we don't tap into our own fossil fuel resources. So that's when they bring in the Green New Deal, and now they're conveniently using a war in Europe to usher in their climate agenda. And you saw that in that conference today, because he came out and said, we and the world need to stop being so dependent on fossil fuel energy. And then he went on to say, we have to start tackling the climate crisis. So people don't ask themselves these questions. How is it that we went from a war, Ukraine, Russia, that's why our gas prices have gone up? What does the climate crisis have to do with this? Like, people don't ask themselves, how did we get from there to climate crisis? Without there being an agenda. And people don't ask themselves these questions of, oh, this is just happening. Oh, President Biden said the bad guy's Putin. He said that we got to be looking at what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. That's why my gas prices are so high. Oh, but by the way, let's tackle this climate crisis. And it just gets pushed on the people, and people don't ask themselves why.
Well, I have a question then. So at the beginning, when he first took office, he was all about the climate crisis and all this type of stuff. You hear a lot of rhetoric in that regard. And it kind of died down for a while, and now it's ramping back up, you know, try to, you know, deflect and all this sort of thing. Do you think the American people are going to believe this second round of climate crisis?
Yeah, I do.
You think so? Amid the gas prices?
I totally do.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's easy to believe it, right? There's no competing narrative ever when it comes to anything environmentalism remotely related, let alone climate change and the entire debate there. And I could talk about this for like 12 hours. Like, literally, I'm so passionate about this subject because, by the way, everything you've been told is just a straight up lie about the environment. Like, consistently throughout American history, every single major thing that's happened to protect the environment and conserve our public lands happened because of conservatives, not because of liberals. So actually do the research and look into the history associated with this. Just recently, guess who gave the greatest maintenance facelift to all of our national parks and public lands? Not the left. It was written by a conservative senator in the Senate and then endorsed by President Trump through the Great American Outdoors Act. Who had the idea to plant 1 trillion trees and help decrease carbon emissions? President Trump. I mean, all of these things over and over and over again, even today, are never spearheaded by the people who claim to care about the environment the most. Stop listening to that. It is absolutely ridiculous nonsense, and it has nothing to do with helping the environment at all. Has nothing to do with decreasing carbon emissions or trying to help preserve our public lands or conserve things in the United States. It has to do with them lining their pockets.
Come on now.
That's all it does.
And then when people hear like, oh, 1 million barrels of oil each day, wow, that sounds like a lot. It still does not make up for all the barrels of oil that we used to produce under President Trump. So you talk about really wanting the gas prices to go down. Why don't we go back to what was working? If it ain't broke,
and then you
don't
also
fix
got
it.
to ask yourself, John, and like for the viewers, is if we're going to start tapping into our reserve, is while we're not increasing production here in America, is that still part of his agenda to deplete what we have?
Oh, most definitely.
Oh, EV. And it's like, these people are dumb. They don't ask themselves, like, why is it that, what are we going to do? Literally power our American military off of electric, solar and wind? Like, how are we going to go fight a war? I'm not advocating for war. I'm just saying, think about these
Airplanes.
things.
I mean,
The
all
whole
the
9
questions.
yards. While Bill Gates is buying up real estate on the beach in California, these are the same people telling you that, oh, climate change, the world's going to end. You need to go get an EV, go full green. They're the ones that know that this is an agenda and they want the full totalitarian power over the people. It's the Great Reset, John.
Exactly.
People need to think about this stuff. Why are we going to deplete our own resources while they're telling us go full EV? Well, we're got to go fight a war. What, off electric?
Exactly.
Only fight during the
And
daytime.
then the final thing we'll say about
An
this
electric tank, John?
Oh boy!
Well,
I forgot the double A's. We can't fight that.
I'm just saying, dude. It pisses me off. It's like, dude, people think about this stuff.
Well, we have memes now about transgender tanks, so I'm sure we could have an electric transgender
Why not?
tank.
I'm sorry, John.
Why
I'm sorry.
not? Yeah.
Final thing we'll say about this address is going off of that. He's saying, like, Americans, you could save about $80 a month if you didn't have to pay for gas. All you need to do is buy a $70,000 electric car. You can all afford that, right? And then he's talking about there needs to be about like an average, I think he said about 46 miles per gallon for every single car. It's like you're telling people they need to buy new cars. How many people they can't even afford gas right now or to live or groceries, and you're telling them like $70,000 spend on a car.
By the way, the median household income in our country is $68,000. So have fun spending all of that on an electric car.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Insane. But something else we want to touch on is, I know the Florida, it's not called the Don't Say Gay bill. Parental Rights and Education bill is actually what it's called. Once again, it does not say gay in that bill at all. And it's just making sure the power is with the parents. And
Anti-grooming bill.
Exactly. And I think this has led to other states responding as well. It's like we need to take a stand for parents and make sure they have power and they have at least an open and honest discussion about what's going on in schools. So it looks like Georgia is trying to push the Common Humanity in Private Education Act, that is also known as GASB 613. And that bill, that was some state senators in Georgia. They introduced it right after the Parental Rights in Education bill in Florida that just got passed. So it looks like this legislation is going to prohibit classroom instruction relating to sexual orientation or gender identity for young students. And this is the first bill, it sounds like, that's going to apply to private schools specifically. There's a little back and forth there of public schools and private schools, but it sounds like from what they're saying here, according to National Review, that it would ban materials that promote, compel, or encourage classroom discussion of sexual orientation or gender identity in primary grade levels or in a manner that is not appropriate for the age and developmental stage of the student. So that's about K through 6, and they're also making sure that they're pushing back against critical theory. You have to remember CRT is under the umbrella of critical theory. It's just one little part of that too, and they're making sure that kids aren't either seen as the oppressor or the oppressed. And then especially, we talked so much about when school went to Zoom, they were so like, don't have your parents, in the room. Like, don't want them hearing what they're saying. It's like, no, every single parent should know whether that kid is doing school online, which shouldn't happen. They should be in the classroom. when they drop their kid off, they should know what is being taught, and they just look for an open and honest discussion about those things. And also knowing, one other thing I'll say before I get your guys' reaction to this, is there's about $100 million in taxpayer subsidies that go to private schools. And I think a lot of times too, you're spending so much money to send your kid there, and you're hoping they're getting an education that's not an indoctrination. What do you think, Stephen?
I mean, especially when it comes to CRT, we always talk about this. This is not something that's needed at all whatsoever. Victimizing the whole entire minority community and saying that the white community is a bunch of perpetrators, that's not good for society, and that's definitely not good for kids. So, we need to definitely stand up for our kids. We definitely need to stand up for, getting this woke ideology out of our school systems and stop indoctrinating our children, plain and simple.
Yeah, and obviously, like, we're not going to tell you what to vote for here, but, like, knowing that, like, basically what happened in Florida, it's happening in other states, and I think this goes around this whole idea of, like, why is there this transgender push? Going off what Isabel said, it's coming from the top down. And from the state level, they're pushing back against this too, and you should push it back against this yourself, because we see so much stuff that's happening in schools across the country. Like, what they're doing constantly with the left is redefining terms. So when we talk specifically about CRT, we're seeing that there is some, goodness gracious. Sometimes we cover stuff on the show, and I'm like, I can't believe how they're trying to push these things. A conservative group found out some teachers are renaming CRT, get this, social emotional learning. And there was an investigation from Accuracy in Media that said the school administrators from Idaho and Tennessee admitted to rebranding lessons so they could teach these same subjects. So they could literally tell you straight up, no, we're not teaching CRT. Remember, this is social emotional learning. It's not CRT.
The left is really good with these veneers, right? With these euphemistic expressions. Black Lives Matter. Oh, you mean black supremacy and Marxism. Oh, Antifa. Oh, you mean domestic terrorism. Women's reproductive health. You mean murdering children. I mean, they're good at the euphemistic game, and they play this game so well. And it, honestly, to a lot of people, they're just like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm all for that. Yeah, Black Lives Matter, yeah. Until you get into the nitty-gritty of what it is, then they tend to push back. But this is typical. They're good at this game. They're really good.
I'm young enough to remember we had social emotional learning in school. I went to private school growing up, and our social emotional learning classes were literally social emotional learning. We talked about, how to interact with one another and how to have fun with one another, all kinds of stuff. Like PE was part of that. We had like rotating classes all the time. I loved social emotional learning classes, SEL classes we called them. I would not love them so much if people were screaming at me that, having nothing to do with my own family, I was evil because I happen to be white. It's fine.
Yeah, people should be learning about like discipline and teamwork.
Yes.
So like when you have
literally,
those activities
that's what we were
like
learning
that,
about. Yeah.
Not like, okay, so we're gonna work together, but Stephen, I want you to think too, like just in case a white kid gives you some sort of order. I want you to feel oppressed.
Or even better, maybe they'll say, Stephen, we're doing a social emotional learning class today. We're going to replicate what we've seen in other states. Why don't you get up there on the sale auction block and we'll pretend to sell you as a slave?
Which they
really
are
dive
doing.
into the emotions.
Let's really get into the nitty gritty of this right here.
How did it make you feel?
Wonderful.
You win the youth, you win a generation. And these people know this. And the problem here, this is why here at TPUSA, we're warning you about big government. Because we're not only talking economically, we're talking morally as well. What happens when big government gets depraved and starts targeting little kids with these psychotic, disgusting, perverted ideas? You get 2022, where we are right now, where they want to mutilate the bodies of little kids. They want child groomers, kindergarten teachers to be able to do that, and they fight against bills preventing that, and they fight for it. This is why we say big gov. I'm kind of sick of saying it sucks. It's dangerous. It's murderous. It could get perverse because you have these disgusting, depraved ideas that start to infiltrate society and target children. This is why we are where we are, and this is why this is so important for us to engage on a daily basis, because this is an ideological war.
100%.
And you cannot get away where these dangerous ideas begin to target innocent people.
And that's why I go back to saying, like, there's so much smoke and mirrors that they're going to redefine terms. Like, there's even school administrators from Tennessee's Marion School County, Kimberly Shruett. She said that CRT isn't actively being taught. It's also not actually in classrooms. So, like, that's what they want you to believe. It's like, it's not CRT.
You got to pick one, though. Yeah. You can't say it's not actively being taught. It's not a thing. It's never being taught. It's just a figment of your imagination. But at the same time, it's Black history. Black history is CRT. Which one is it? You have to pick a lane, and you have to stay in it, but it's the left.
And it's
double
the
standard.
same thing with what you're saying, Drew. It's just
Well-tarts.
like, we're going to tell you, like, no, this is like diversity and inclusion training.
Yeah.
So like, we're not teaching grooming and all those things.
Dude, it's woke-tarded because these people are like, the CRT isn't in schools. You can't find CRT. We're not indoctrinating children. I'm like, you know what? We shouldn't teach CRT in schools. You're a racist. How dare you say we shouldn't say CRT should be taught? It's like what Steven is saying. They want you to be confused. It's a continual confusion agenda. They don't want you to pinpoint where it's at, and they want to keep you on your toes and confused because they don't want to get caught. And once they get caught, they start pointing the finger at you. They project.
Come on.
Same thing with this whole sex ed thing. The same can be said. Nobody's teaching kids about sex. What are you talking about? Nobody's telling kids they should genitally mutilate themselves. You're crazy. That's a right-wing conspiracy. But then you say, hey, let's not teach this in schools. Oh, no, don't say gay, 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 gay. It's like, what are you people on? Like, for the love of God.
Final thought with that is, like, we all talked about the Loudoun County situation. Yeah. And, like, what an absolute disrespectful slap in the face to be telling a parent whose daughter just got raped in the bathroom that, like, no, like, this is all just a right-wing conspiracy that they're trying to push to scare you to win elections. No, people are getting hurt. And there's, once again, irreversible damage for this kind of stuff. Think about the psychological effect that has on students. Like, that's for life, and that's on the left. We're going to be right back for the Professor Watchlist. But first, Student Action Summit. We'll tell you how to get all signed up after you check this out.
Calling all based patriots, meme lords, and conservatives, Student Action Summit is happening 2022, Tampa, Florida, July 22nd through the 24th. You don't want to miss it. You'll make lifelong friends, you'll probably meet your soulmate, and you'll be able to network with the biggest names in the conservative movement. Sign up now on TPUSA.com.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We're at TPUSA HQ, the mecca of young conservatism. What a spot. I love it here. We got Transgender Visibility Day again. I will constantly remind you, huge, huge day. Drew, Steven, Isabel, I'm John. Professor Watchlist. Here are some wackos on campuses. We always cover this on Thursday. We're going to start with this. Dr. Margot Kaplan. Congratulations for making the Professor Watchlist. You are the worst. Professor of Law at Rutgers University Law School in New Jersey. So
really
this professor teaches criminal health and sex crimes. So you hear that and you're like, oh, hopefully people are getting the truth. But this is what Dr. Kaplan is trying to do, is trying to normalize pedophilia. So I know it's something we've covered on the show before. It's like they're now calling these people MAPs, minor attracted persons. It's just they're going through a little something. And so Dr. Kaplan wrote a paper on how pedophilia is a disorder that they should not punish. Sounds kind of similar to what's going on with the SCOTUS nominee right now too. So it looks like Dr. Kaplan attempts a effort here to tell her readers that you should be sympathizing with these people. This is a quote. Think back to your first childhood crush. Maybe it was a classmate or a friend next door. Most likely, through school and into adulthood, your affections continue to focus on others in your approximate age group. But imagine if they did not. By some estimates, 1% of the male population continues long after puberty to find themselves attracted to prepubescent children. These people are living with pedophilia, a sexual attraction to young children that often constitutes a mental illness. Unfortunately, our laws are failing them and consequently ignoring opportunities to prevent child abuse. Sympathizing with them is not going to help child abuse. It's only going to make it worse, Drew.
This is what I'm saying. It's like it's not liberal to be void of morality or standards, and I think that's where we've gotten to in society. Where if I come out and say, you know what, maybe we should have some moral standards. I'm somehow the bigot. You know what? Maybe we should have some kind of moral standards between males and females. Maybe we should be careful with getting into this space. Maybe we should refrain from something like that. And then somehow I become the bigot. I'm the one that wants to control your life. But it's not liberal to be void of morality, and you cannot get away from this. This is where it goes. We've opened ourselves up to these agendas. We've destroyed marriage. Marriage is not what God meant it to be. It's destroyed. It's reprobate. It's destroyed completely. But now these ideas are going to little kids as well. And when you open yourself up like this in a society, this is where it goes. You can't I don't care what anybody says. I don't care. Read Romans chapter 1. It's right there. A depraved, reprobate society, when you open up yourself like this, it unleashes on the society itself. And then people want to come out in the name of liberalism and say, oh, don't you Bible thump me and tell me how to live my life. Okay, well, now you got to deal with pedophiles. Yeah. Okay, because you wanted to open up yourself to a depraved society. I'm not the bad guy. Right. I'm not the wrong one. I'm trying to protect little children from getting to this point. I'm the one living in 2022 now where we have to deal with this stuff. And somehow I'm the crazy person. Somehow I'm the bigot. Somehow I'm the self-righteous individual that's saying maybe we should have standards of morality in society.
And then knowing that this, just like you said, this is not new. Like this stuff has been going on. Pedophilia and the way that people look at young children is ever since the biblical days. Yeah. Like you can read that, that's in the word. And then now it's not different that there's pedophilia. It's now it's being sympathized. Yeah. Here, especially in a country like this. You talk about a country that was built on Judeo-Christian values and the family. And you can be whoever you want to be in this country. You can come from wherever and you can find success here, but there's this whole aspect of this new morality. It's the whole deconstructionist movement. We need to tear everything down, the way you think about family, the way you think about relationships, the way you think about this country, and then we're going to build back better. And it's hurting people.
This is from both sides of the situation, too. And I think that's the story we often miss. Like, yes, we're seeing so many high-profile people, be it law professors or nominees to the Supreme Court of the United States, say, oh, well, we need to have sympathy for pedophiles because they're going through a lot of this stuff and we shouldn't be punishing them, whatever. On the flip side of that, you're seeing multiple examples this summer of people in our country trying to host sex summer camps for kids to teach them how to have sex with themselves, why they should be sexually attracted to people. It is insane. And so when you approach it from both sides of the situation, when you're like, oh, we should be welcoming this into society, we shouldn't be punishing people if they're remotely attracted to prepubescent children, that's normal now. But you're also teaching kids, hey, this is something that's really good for you and you should be engaging in this type of behavior as a child because it's really empowering and you don't need to wait to be an adult to do all of these things. Of course this becomes normalized. And it just blows my mind how we still live in a society in 2022 where we can look at other countries when children are abducted from their families or they're human trafficked into situations where they become child brides or they're raped in situations of war and conflict. But here at home, we make it fun and package it as summer camp, or we package it as new justice in our country, and it's all the good, warm, fuzzy feelings. How can both of those things simultaneously exist?
And they're both destructive too, like knowing that like you have a summer camp that's pushing this whole masturbation thing too.
Multiple summer camps.
Yeah, multiple summer camps that are doing that. And then also too, you're now telling people, it's like, what about the little percentage of people that still like kids? Like there's something wrong with those people. They need help. Yeah, they need help. Just like there's a reason why they're pushing these small minority groups that have a mental illness. When we talk about transgenders and you talk about pedophiles, you shouldn't be sympathizing with that and allowing them to go ahead and do your thing like they're just minor attracted persons. This other professor that made it to the Professor Watchlist is Dr. Jane Ward. Congratulations on making it to Professor Watchlist. Jane is a professor of gender and sexuality studies at the University of California, Riverside. So she teaches about sexuality, gender, and feminist theory at UC Riverside. And here's a quote from her. From a LGBTQ perspective, being straight looks actually very tragic. Dr. Jane also offers training on her own time to help adults, parents, and teachers refrain from policing a child's gender expression. So obviously,
again, this is what I'm saying. Jeez. They're like, hey kids, how old are you? 8, 9? Let's talk about sex.
and in a disordered way too.
Yes.
I mean, this is unbelievable.
I remember in like 5th, 6th grade, every parent at my school wanting to look at the sex ed curriculum. They were super wary about what they were going to be teaching kids, just generally about how our body works. And people were so involved in these conversations. Now, we're just totally open to whatever a child wants to talk about with all of this stuff, instead of protecting them and their interests and guarding their hearts and shielding them from these absolutely depraved ideas. I don't know what kind of long-term emotional impact this is going to have on the youngest members of Gen Z and the oldest members of Gen Alpha, who are the children of millennials. Please pray for them. Good Lord, they need us. But this is going to completely turn our society upside down.
That sounds like a gay supremacist to me. I'm just being
I
honest.
guess.
Right,
You know what I mean?
Why
Like,
can't we
because
say that?
When you come out and you say like heterosexuality is a tragedy,
Ugh.
like
Woe is
like,
me.
yes, being heterosexual, like I'm offended by that.
Yes.
But like, how do you not see that that is such a supremacist thing to come out and say?
Yes.
They don't mind
Like,
supremacy as
you
long as
yourself
it fits their
put
agenda.
yourself in this position where you think you have the higher ground to talk down to another group in society where it really is like this supremacy that we're continuing to see in the far left, and I've never even thought about it that way before. It's like this homosexual supremacy that we're seeing across the board, and it's dangerous.
Also, now that I think about it, this whole concept, I think we often focus so strongly on the kids aspect of this argument because, yes, it's tragic and so sad. We should not be sexualizing the brains of children when they have absolutely nothing to do with that at this phase of their life. But just generally speaking, sexual anarchy as a virtue in society sets our entire society up for tragedy. What we're seeing with adult relationships now is equally as tragic. Half of all marriages end in divorce. Marriage in and of itself is not the norm anymore in society. This is the lowest marriage rate our country has ever seen in 2022 since they started recording it in the 1800s. Hookup culture is totally rampant. Nobody actually wants to have a monogamous partner, be it gay, straight, or anywhere in between. And so instead we're dating like 8 people at once, maybe even all together, and calling it polyamorous, and that's the new frontier.
And telling
that's
people
what we
that
should
like
be
this
pushing.
whole like drive before you buy, and that's
Right,
the way
right,
like
right,
your
right, right,
relationship
we're
should be.
setting
and-
people up for heartbreak and misery and loneliness, even as adults, let alone children. And we're reaching people younger and younger and younger with these ideas. How on earth are we honestly going to expect a successful society moving forward when we know how devastating this is to your mental state, to the future of your potential relationships with other people once this has become the normal pattern of behavior, and for the family in general?
And they're just not getting the truth too. So I'd love to hear someone like this, like Dr. Ward, like give me stats and data to tell me like why this is actually good for relationships and why this is good for our nation. Because
they can't.
They can't at all. It's all about feelings. It's not about logic anymore at all. And you talk about, you know, marriages crumbling. It's even like the aspect of moving in together before marriages. Obviously, there's times where like that's going to work out, but the odds are not ever in your favor.
I don't even think this has to be an isolated logic conversation, though. We do that as conservatives a lot, and it's really powerful, and it works most of the time. But in stuff like this, talk about feelings. Talk about how all of these lies we have told society are making everyone miserable. Pew Research, Gallup, everyone who polls people is finding that we are the most dissatisfied in our personal dating and sexual relationships than we've ever been as a country. There's a reason for that. So tap into that and tell people, guess what? There's a better way. We don't have to talk to kids about sex. We don't have to embrace sexual anarchy. We can reinstate morality in society with an objective truth and an objective sense of what is right and wrong. And guess what? We're all going to be a lot happier and more fulfilled because of that.
Yeah, it's time to be comfortable being uncomfortable. It's extremely uncomfortable not giving into those temptations and just giving into like what the world's telling you. You got people on the biggest stage here telling us like, you know, just make sure you have transactional relationships. Go and do that. Like whatever you feel, you know, you want to be another gender. It's not helping people.
Yeah.
And stats, data, everything is not on your side at all. But we're going to take a quick break. We got a message from Freedom Square, and then we're going to be back with the one, the only Charlie Kirk with some breaking news for one last thing.
All right, guys, you have signed up, right? You've joined freedomsquare.com. If you haven't, why not? This should have happened a decade ago. How did somebody not think of this earlier? If you're a business owner, we have a business directory to promote your business to patriots across the nation. So if you want to buy American, if you want to sell American, we have a business directory. Whatever it is, go now.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Once again, welcome back to TPUSA Live at TPUSA headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. We were just talking about the Professor Watchlist, so if you want some more updates on those two crazy professors or other professors across the country, you can go to professorwatchlist.org. The team does a great job there. And before we get Charlie on, I do want to touch on this. So there was news that came out that a medical student allegedly missed a vein a couple times for someone that made fun of their pronoun button or their pin that they had on. So this Wake Forest University medical student wrote on social media that she purposely injured a patient because he mocked her pronoun pin. So there it is. I had a patient I was doing a blood draw on, see my pronoun pin, and loudly laughed to the staff. She, her, well, of course it is. What other pronouns even are there? It? I missed the vein, so he had to get struck twice. So it looks like Libs at TikTok tagged the official Wake Forest School of Medicine account, noting that the student had subsequently deleted their Twitter account right after that. Like now, if you feel offended, you're going to purposely injure somebody here. So there's that tweet from Libs of TikTok. This fourth-year medical student, like someone that's been in medical school for a good minute, says she abused a patient because they laughed at her pronoun pin. She has since deleted her account.
This is psychosis. This is psychotic. I mean, to the point where you're going to injure people because they laugh at your pronoun pin.
Also, why would you announce this publicly?
You just outed yourself. You said, look at me, I'm a criminal. Please arrest me. Please kick me out of daggone school, medical school, in which I'm in my 4th year. Do you know how much crap you had to go through to get to your 4th year of medical school?
I know exactly how much crap you had to go through. Yep. It's awful. I took OChem 3 times, baby. It's horrible. Yeah.
That sounds horrible.
It is, yeah.
I liked my communications and journalism classes.
Yeah, I'm sure you had a lot of fun in college. Can't relate. Can't relate.
But that's what they do because they hope that they're going to get some sort of support from a just depraved place like Twitter. And I have no idea what's going on there, so you guys are going to have to let me know while I'm off. But there's obviously reasons why you see tweets like this and why you see stuff on TikTok where it's just like, look what I just did. Yeah. And they aren't seen as a menace to society. It's like, wow, you taught them right there. Because like, if someone just does this, when it's just a blood draw, what are they going to do when there's a major surgery?
Oops, nick that artery. My bad.
And also remember, a lot of people that were free thinkers and love America and love freedom, they were pushed out because because they didn't want to get a medical procedure that went against their morals, convictions, and even science and data. So those people are gone. So now we have a whole society in the medical field that's filled with, like you'd say, woke tards. Just like, oh, you don't like my pin? Boom, boom, boom. Here's something that could actually really injure somebody.
It's like a regime. If you don't have the same ideas as us, or if you offend our ideas or you oppose our ideas, you don't get access to the economy. You don't get access to the medical field. You don't get the access to any of these things. And that's kind of where we're going with this woke supremacist regime. And people don't realize it's real.
It really
Exactly.
is.
All right, so we got some breaking news from the big man himself, Charlie Kirk. Charlie, how you doing? Oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. That is not Charlie Kirk. That is, this is, I guess, is an early April Fool's, ladies and gentlemen. That's my dad.
Oh, let's go.
Marvelous
Mark
Let's
Root.
go, Daddy Root. Let's go.
Daddy Root.
Isabel. Drew, what's up, man? I can't see you guys, but I know you're there. I've been listening to you.
My goodness. Yeah, Charlie, it looks like you've aged a little bit. Where are you going?
I've been working out with Steven.
Hey,
I love it.
That's how we do right here. That's how we do.
Yeah, so proud of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you think, John Patrick?
Yeah, this is good. This is, I'll be honest, whatever the heck has been going on this whole show is kind of.
I totally forgot it was April Fool's.
It was like, yeah, and then there's that sound again.
You guys are diving deep here.
Yeah.
Always. Always.
Well, I will tell you, Dad,
Yeah,
thanks so
diving
much.
deep.
Thanks so much for sending me to private schools that didn't groom me, Dad. I really appreciate it.
Taught you all about inflation and finance and having a good credit score.
Those are musts.
Those are good things.
Amen to that. All right, Dad. Any final words before we let you go and go wherever you're going right now?
I love you guys. God bless you guys. You guys are such rock stars. You're absolutely amazing. Amazing.
you.
Keep it up and just continue to pray for your protection and just all of you guys are just amazing. You know, even you, John Patrick.
Even you, John.
Thanks, Dad.
You
Love
guys
you.
keep an eye on him. Putting up with him is
we will.
That's a handful.
We will make sure to bully him every chance we get.
I'm really so proud of you guys and what you're doing to help all these young people today and all the children. Oh my gosh, the children! What's happening? And Drew, you know, and Isabel and Stephen. Am I missing somebody else there?
You're missing your son, but
there's
it's all
another
good.
young lady.
But Dad,
I can't tell. I'm up at Loomis Park, and I just so proud of you guys. Just pray for God's love, protection, and care, and wisdom for you guys. And it's just it's amazing just to have a moment here with you. And just, I mean, I listen to you guys pretty much every day, all of you. So it's just, and whatever else you do, it's just an inspiration to me.
Appreciate you, Dad. Hey, I'm going to give you a call so we can keep this conversation going. But we got to get to Jack Posobiec. Love you, Dad. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Yeah. All right.
What a show. So I guess April Fool's is coming early. My goodness. So that was Marvelous Smart Root, and I guess we're going to keep hearing this. It's been a stinky, weird show. My goodness. All right. I'm done with all of it. Stephen, Isabel, Drew, I'm John. Human Events Daily later.
China lied, people died. You think we're the only economy that China wants to see fail?
You haven't been paying attention.
Remember all your online purchases? But really, we're the product. Am I the only one who wants to know why the rich got so much richer? Are you still with me? Because it gets worse.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, powered by Turning Point USA. Today's top stories. Federal grand jury is investigating Hunter Biden. His ties to Burisma, his ties to China, and the CCP. We're going to break it all down. Next, the president of BlackRock investment firm warns that an entitled generation needs to brace for shock of shortages and higher failures. Fentanyl poisoning is now #1 cause of death in adults 18 to 45 in the United States. And finally, the pandemic era policy Title 42 is allowing migrants to be turned away at the U.S.-Mexico border. It's going to end May 23rd. All this and more ahead, Human Events Daily.
I get calls from my father to tell me that the New York Times is calling, but my old partner Eric, who literally has done me harm for I don't know how long, is the one taking the calls because my father will not stop sending the calls to Eric. I have another New York Times reporter calling about my representation of literally, Dr. Patrick Koh, the spy chief of China, who started the company that my partner, who was worth $323 billion, founded, and is now missing. The richest man in the world is missing, who was my partner. He was missing since I last saw him in his $58 million apartment and signed a $4 billion deal to build the largest LNG port in the world.
Well, that right there, and I mentioned about this yesterday, that's Hunter Biden. And what he's doing is confessing. That's what we call a confession tape. He thinks he's venting, but, you know, as any military interrogator will tell you, anything you can do to get your subject to open up and start spilling the beans, right? You've got to use one of those emotional approaches. And in this case, pride and ego are obviously direct triggers for Hunter Biden. And so what he's talking about there are these dirty dealings that he's been doing that have been going on for years. They're obviously, clearly tied to the family. And I think it's ridiculous that when you hear the Biden administration talk about this, they say, oh, it has nothing to do with the president. It has no clue. Don't worry. No, understand how this worked. Hunter Biden was the bag man. He was the one who took the money in for the family. The money came from various places. It may have come from China, the CCP. It may have come from Ukraine, Burisma. It came from the Moscow mayor's wife, Elena Baturina, $3 million, which later turned into another investment. So understand, his up Kazakhstan, Romania, there's so many more we could get into. But the point is, he was the bag man. It was family money. It was understood that way. And there's other videos where he's complaining about how he's the only one in the family that makes all the money and keeps the family going. Well, all of this, it turns out, is actually under federal investigation in Delaware. And the heat is turning up because now that grand jury that's been seated in Delaware with the federal prosecutors there is bringing in interviewees, associates of Hunter Biden, people who have come in to talk about his business dealings, and even talking about his illegal drug use, which, of course, I've seen the laptop, unfortunately, and you can see his illegal drug use and illegal drug use between himself, female partners, even with children in the very same house. And they talk about the children being in the house in these videos. That, of course, would be a state-level crime. So when it comes to what they're looking at, remember, just after the election, Hunter Biden put out this statement that said, oh, there's a tax investigation going on. He tried to say it was just about taxes. Well, it turns out it's not just about taxes. They're looking into whether or not he violated the FARA law. And what's FARA? Well, we remember that from the Trump era, right? The FARA law was, are you operating at the behest of a foreign power without being registered? And he clearly was in terms of the CCP-owned companies that he was involving in, and he certainly was in terms of this Burisma company, which is directly controlled by elements of the Ukrainian government, a state-owned enterprise. And so when you're looking at this whole situation, this isn't just about taxes, right? This is about the whole thing. And it's also about, by the way that he moved his money around, the way that he got paid, right? That was a huge part. I remember I covered every single day of the Paul Manafort trial back when it was held over in Virginia. And they dug through how the payments were coming. To remember, Manafort was also working for the Ukrainians. But he was being paid by Ukrainian oligarchs through accounts in Cyprus, and then he wasn't paying his taxes on them. Same deal with Hunter Biden. He was obfuscating the way the money was coming in. He wasn't paying taxes. And here's the key difference. Here's the absolute key difference. Hunter Biden was lobbying the federal government on behalf of Burisma, so on behalf of Ukraine, while his father is the vice president of the United States, who we also know had a direct role in choosing and firing people who are at the highest levels of the Ukrainian government. So we understand the corruption, we see the corruption. Let's wait and see if anything actually happens. Because as we know, if your name is a Biden or a Clinton, you seem to always escape justice.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock, we are forcing behaviors.
Well, that was the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, telling us how he believes his firm is job. The role of his firm isn't to make money for his investors or to manage wealth properly. No. His job is to force behavior, right? Now we've got the president, the co-founder of BlackRock, coming out also saying, Rob Capito, saying, an entitled generation needs to brace for the shock of shortages and higher inflation, as experts warn Americans will pay an extra $433 a month for basic goods this year. So understand what we're getting into. This is the highest middle-class tax raise that this country has seen in 40 years. That's what this inflation is. And keep in mind, the inflation is on you. The inflation is on your family. The inflation is on working families. It's not on Larry Fink, right? It's not on him. It's not on BlackRock. It's not on these guys. No. Here's the way the money printer works. I said it before. I'm going to say it again. The people who benefit the most are the people closest to the king at the expense of those who are furthest away from the throne. What does that mean? They print the money. It used to be, right, go back to France, medieval France. This is where this came up. And in medieval France, when they would discover a new gold mine, it wasn't the people who lived around the gold mine that benefited. No. What would happen was the people closest to the king would get access to the new gold first. Then they would use that to go out and make purchases, expensive purchases around the world, around the country. And then that would drive prices up for everybody else, for the people furthest away. But it didn't matter to the people who got the gold first because they were the ones that were driving the inflation, right? This is how inflation works. So with money printing, it's the exact same thing. We're hearing stories now, by the way, that some of the moves that Russia is making to raise the price of the ruble, to stabilize it, it's almost back. The ruble is almost now back to pre-war levels. What does that mean? Well, number one, that means the sanctions are a complete failure, but also number two, what are they doing with the ruble? Well, they've said they want oil payments to Western Europe to be done in rubles, and they also said that they're looking at pegging the ruble to gold. That means moving away from debt-based currency and moving back, essentially, to a gold standard, or at least some kind of mix of a gold and oil standard there. We don't do that in the United States. We do stuff like this. We print money like crazy. We give it to people like BlackRock. The Fed gives it to people like BlackRock. Of course, Ron Paul talked about this for years and years and years. Heed my warning, right? But we didn't. And now when BlackRock turns around and says, oh, you have to deal with inflation, he says it's your fault. He says you just need to suck it up. You just are too entitled, you're selfish, you're spoiled. I'm sorry, look, who are you talking about that's selfish and spoiled? The people who can't afford to buy a home? The people who can't get jobs? The people who went through the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, have no wealth formation, they're putting off family formation, they're not able to get access to homes? That's not their fault. That's the fault of Larry Fink's generation. That's the fault of Joe Biden's generation. That's the fault of the generation before. And I'm just saying it. I'm just saying it. The decisions, not everybody in the generation, come on, I'm not like that. But I'm saying the decisions made by the decision makers have created economic consequences downstream of the people who are benefiting on this. The exact same way that in medieval France, it's called the Catillion Effect, you can look this up, that the people closest to the king were the people who benefited most from the new gold. That's what we're seeing here. And that you hear this attitude of, it's not our fault, it's your fault. Well, of course, you're still going to be rich. Capito, by the way, an estimated net worth of $400 million and made $24.6 million in total compensation in 2020. What did he say? I would put on your seatbelts because this is something we haven't seen, said Capito, who blamed a shortage of workers, energy, and agricultural supplies for soaring scarcity inflation. Now, he's certainly right in terms of the supply side on energy, right? So I'm with him on that, obviously. But the shortage of workers is because people are checking out of this crooked system. They're saying they don't want a part in this. They can see that it's a scam. They know that they're being scammed and they know that they're being screwed and they're done with it. They want out. This is why, the whole meme stock and the apes and the ape army, AMC and GameStop and all the rest, that's why that exists. That's why all of that exists, because they're sick and tired of the hedgies. They're sick and tired of the people who are milking the system and milking future generations by putting America more and more into debt. Because that's what that is, by the way. Inflation is a tax. It's an invisible tax. You don't even know because the dollar amount, your bank account stays the same. But the ability of you to purchase more with that money changes. It's one of the most insidious taxes, and it's incredibly duplicitous. So shame on you, BlackRock, for blaming people for your own actions.
Judge Jackson, before you granted this fentanyl kingpin's motion to reduce his sentence, did you contact any of the victims from his case?
Senator, thank you for allowing me to address Mr. Young's situation.
I asked a simple question. Did you contact the victims in his case or not?
Senator, Mr. Young was not released. His sentence was reduced, and I did not contact the victims in this case because there were no victims. He committed a crime, a drug crime. There were no identifiable victims in his case.
Drug crime is not a victimless crime. 100,000 Americans were killed by overdoses.
Understood.
So that's Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas grilling Ketanji Brown Jackson, the nominee for Supreme Court. She'll probably be confirmed here in a couple of weeks or so to take her role on the Supreme Court. But he's grilling her not on the question of child pornography, and we've talked about all of those cases in great detail, but he's talking to her about fentanyl. And this is actually something where, and it amazes me, right? You know, we live in a society where we're so heavily propagandized. We get as much propaganda in the United States as North Korea does today, right? Top-down, intelligence agency-driven, government-driven propaganda. What do I mean by that, right? Stand with Ukraine billboards everywhere. Get vaccinated everywhere. So you're constantly getting this propaganda. Yet at the same time, there's things going on in our own country that we're not talking about because they don't fit one of these various narratives. And one of those is the fact that here in the United States, and Cotton just mentioned it, we actually just hit an all-time high, higher than ever, of overdose deaths in the United States. All time. We're also seeing massive rises in violent crime, insane amounts of violent crime in our city, senseless violence, people getting killed for literally no reason, right? People taking the streets and just shooting each other up. I went to school in North Philadelphia. I would not set foot in North Philadelphia on my life, and you better believe I'm not taking my family up there. And one of the reasons, specifically on that case of overdoses, is because of fentanyl, and because fentanyl is so incredibly potent and so incredibly lethal. It's almost like a poison. It really is almost like a poison. What's happening though, is because you're getting so many of these street drugs and street versions of synthetic drugs, street version of oxycodone or Oxycontin or something, and they'll call it the opioid crisis, but they're not talking about fentanyl. They're not talking about the idea that this stuff is being churned out in Chinese biolabs. Can't talk about the Ukrainian biolabs, but maybe we could talk about the Chinese biolabs, the drug labs, where they're putting together this fentanyl. Then it's being shipped to the cartels because, of course, they're making so much more money off of this because it's just profit for them. And then it comes straight to the United States. This chain has been going on for years now, and it has hit a peak. And yet, when we're in an election year right now. Right now is an election year. We don't talk about it. There's a place in Philadelphia near where my brother used to live. It's called Kensington. And in that area of Kensington, that's where the overpass is for the L. So the overhead L is there, and Market Frankfurt line. And underneath that overpass, and you see videos of this going viral on social media, of what looks like some kind of blown out zombie apocalypse kind of scene. And the locals call it Kensington Beach. Why do they call it Kensington Beach when it's not near the beach? Well, because the junkies will be in there, will be using so many drugs, it's essentially an open air drug market, and then they'll be laid out on the ground, whether they're overdosing or just high on fentanyl, and it looks like you're at the beach. That's how crazy. There's Instagram accounts where you can go look this stuff up. Absolute levels of depravity that are going on in our society. These are American citizens, by the way. This isn't a foreign country. It's not 5,000 miles away, right? It's right here. It's right here at home. But we don't talk about it. It doesn't lead the nightly news, right? 100,000 deaths. American civilians killed in 1 year over this from poison. They buy it on social media, they buy it on Snapchat, they think they're getting some, designer drugs, something synthetic, and they don't know that it's being cut with fentanyl. And that stuff will kill you. Killed Michael K. Williams. Are we actually going to do something serious in this country about this? Or are we going to be stuck following these propaganda campaigns forever?
Is the Biden administration prepared to deal with the aftermath of ending Title 42 and the expected influx of migrants?
So first, what I would say is that this is a decision that we have long deferred to CDC. Title 42 is a public health directive. It is not an immigration or migration enforcement measure. So the decision on when to lift Title 42, we defer to the CDC. That being said, of course, we are planning for multiple contingencies, and we have every expectation that when the CDC ultimately decides it's appropriate to lift Title 42, there will be an influx of people to the border. And so we are doing a lot of work to plan for that contingency.
Well, there you have the Biden administration, their new spokeswoman talking about the end of Title 42 protections. You know, it's kind of interesting that Press Secretary Jen Psaki has been noticeably absent for the last couple of days. You know, one thing that I am hearing from the White House is that she is potentially looking to jump ship to a mainstream media network, and she hasn't decided which one she wants to go to yet, but is in talks and has had contact with various networks talking about coming on either as an analyst or commentator or maybe even eventually hosting her own show. So we'll see if that happens. But congratulations to Jen Psaki if she does end up making that move. However, I don't know if these new spokespeople are doing the work, as they say, as Saji Brown Jackson likes to say. They're not doing the work because they say, oh, well, we might just get an influx once Title 42. So what is Title 42? Right? We've heard about this a lot. And it's kind of a misnomer because it sounds like it's a legal protection, but it's not a legal protection like Title IX or something. It's a public health order. So it's a public health order that was signed and put in place essentially similar to an executive order from March of 2020 by the Trump administration. What it did was it allowed for the rapid expulsion of migrants from the United States when they're encountered at the border coming across illegally by Customs and Border Patrol, CBP, in order to protect the United States during the pandemic. Now, keep in mind that all the other pandemic restrictions are still in place from the Biden administration. They haven't dropped any of those. So their official stated purpose is that we are still, their position is that we're still in a pandemic. So if we're still in a pandemic, then why are you dropping a public health order? But on the flip side of that, let's look at the actual numbers. We're right now on pace to hit 150,000, they counted as migrant encounters by the CBP per month. 150,000 people coming across the southern border per month. That's not sustainable. That's not sustainable for any country, anywhere in the world, right? Every country in the world would not be able to have 150,000 per month coming across. Work that out per year, and the number's going up. They're on pace right now with Title 42 in place to hit 200,000, according to the latest CBP estimates, per month coming across the border. That's double the amount that I just said were killed because of overdose every year. You can't do that as a country. You can't just allow that many people in all the time, right? It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And now if they're going to take Title 42 off, that means that they don't even have the ability for expulsion. And keep in mind, their position legally is that we're still in a pandemic. So my question is, when you got gas prices going and exploding the way they are, when you got crime going up, overdoses going up, why does it seem like they don't actually care about securing the people of the United States, the people of this country, or doing the right thing for them, and they care so much about everyone else? Well, that's all the time we have here. Human Events Daily today. Remember our promise, our oath, our solemn vow to you. Be good, be brief, be gone. And remember, your homework for us, share this out with just one of your normie friends, and then leave us your 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you go. It actually really helps us out. What did we talk about today? The federal grand jury, new details on this investigation into the Hunter Biden payments from overseas. Next, the president of BlackRock warning that the entitled generation needs to brace for shortages and inflation. Yeah, because who's buying up all the houses? That's right, BlackRock is. Fentanyl poisoning, now the #1 cause of death in adults between 18 and 42. I guess the mainstream media doesn't really care about that one. And finally, Title 42 border protections are ending on May 23rd. But before we go, it's time for today's history break. Today, in 1968, President Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, gave a speech about the Vietnam War, incredibly unpopular war that the U.S. chose to be in, announcing that he would not run for re-election. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
China lied, people died. You think we're the only economy that China wants to see fail?
You haven't been paying attention.
Remember all your online purchases? But really, we're the product. Am I the only one who wants to know why the rich got so much richer? Are you still with me? Because it gets worse.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Breakaway Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Root, and my goodness, we live in a wild, wild world. It's actually insane what I was seeing and witnessing in Atlanta, Georgia at the NCAA Division I Women's Swimming Championships. But before we get into this and intro our very special guest for this Sunday conversation, TPUSA Live. They want to give you the truth. You also get a lot more of me. What an absolute dream, right? You can go to tpusa.com/live, going live every single day. Drew Hernandez, Jack Posobiec, yours truly, a lot of great conservative voices, giving you the truth and giving you the tools and resources to fight back against the woke culture. But one way to fight back against the woke culture is speaking out against it. And what I want you to know about this interviewee that you are about to be introduced to, this is Seth Houston, a Division I coach at Rice University. He became the first active Division I coach that spoke out against what the NCAA allowed in these swimming competitions. You got to remember, the NCAA needs to be held accountable for this. I don't like it, but Leah Thomas was abiding by the rules. And something that Seth focused on, I want you to focus on while you're watching and listening to this, is the NCAA is protecting one athlete at the expense of many. Seth breaks down, I feel like in America, be who you want to be. Change your name to whatever you want. But we know that what just happened was unfair. And it's unfair to the women that have been working their entire lives to get to where they're at. And it's not just about Leah Thomas winning. Leah Thomas being involved in the prelims, being involved in the finals is taking a spot away from someone. Whether Leah Thomas is taking a spot on the podium or just on the pool deck there. It's crazy what we're dealing with, but Seth is unbelievably courageous. What he is doing, speaking out against this, looking for accountability from the NCAA, I hope this is a spark that lights the fire. You've seen a few more people come out and speak out, and I think that's really important because this time right now, it's not a time to be silent. It's a time to stand up and speak out, or else we might lose women's sports forever. So upon further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Seth Houston. Hey everyone, I'm sitting down with Rice swimming coach Seth Houston right now. What a beautiful day we got going on right outside the aquatic center.
We swam over here. Yeah.
Basically did. And I'm not a very good swimmer. You don't want to see me in the pool, but the topic about this is actually seeing another biological man in the pool. And I would love just like sitting down here. I know when I saw you a little bit earlier, I was like, I'd love to have a conversation about, from your perspective, what this has been like, for your athletes, for the parents, for just being around, because everything's led to the championships here with Leah Thomas.
Yeah. I'd say, when I spoke out the first time, most of my frustration was just with the NCAA and kind of the lack of leadership at the time. And kind of, let's put this off on governing bodies. And then, governing bodies come up with a pretty, I think, viable solution. And the NCAA kind of said, well, we're not going to, we'll address that after the year. So, I think it's just kind of been, they have kind of protected one athlete at the expense of many, is really how a lot of us here feel.
Yeah, because that's what I feel like everyone's so confused about. It's like, why is this the baseline? Just allowing this, and then we'll come to the table after. Come to the table after people miss out on, like you said, and we've talked off camera, being All-Americans, even being in the final heats, getting to the top spot of the podium. It seems like the NCAA has failed these women, these parents, and coaches like you.
Exactly. And I will say, I feel like the NCAA, for the last almost 50 years, has probably been the leader in creating opportunities for women. And now, lo and behold, out of kind of, just honestly kind of a political correctness, they're regressing and really hurting women. And again, this is, I'm standing up for my team for just the opportunity for them to have scholarships to, come to this meet and final, to be an All-American, for all the all the great things that come with being in sport, the accolades beyond, all the hard work and effort they put in. And I feel like there's a certain point, I heard one of your interviews with the Virginia Tech athlete, and what is kind of the psychological side of it when you're stepping up on the blocks next to Leah? And again, I don't really want to make this about Leah. Leah is really playing by the rules that the NCAA has set, and good for her. But these things probably, I know they needed to be addressed way before we got to this point.
Because, even me, I don't have a swimming background. All I've done is really watch the Olympics. So that's why I wanted to sit down with someone like you that's been in this for a long time. So I watch just now, as we speak, the night before, Leah Thomas won the 500-meter freestyle. And then now yards, excuse me. See, that goes to show I'm not a swimming guy. But keep you that's why we have Seth here. And today, in watching the prelims, it seems like that Leah was almost holding back a little bit and then just started to turn it on right at the end. And this just got to be demoralizing even before you dive into the pool initially.
Yeah, you saw it. I don't want to speak for Leah's strategy because I could tell you if I have an athlete who we feel confident can get into the finals, we're not going to lay it on the line in the preliminaries. We're going to kind of do what it takes to get in, and that very well might have been the strategy that was put in place there. So, really you come back and see what happens tonight. But yeah, there was definitely kind of a controlled effort and finishing strong. It was a pretty good race strategy.
And then something you said too is it seems like a very black and white issue that has gotten way too confusing. And I know even yesterday when I was talking to people that were supporters of Leah Thomas, they couldn't really explain so this person, formerly known as Will, was on the men's team for 3 years and then switches over to the women's team, goes from 400 and something in the nation to number 1 in the events that Leah competes in. Can you explain that? Do you feel like this is someone that's kind of taken advantage of women right now, and it didn't seem like they had an answer to that?
I feel like I guess I could say the NCAA is kind of in cahoots, I guess, with this. We're kind of taking our culture, where, let's face it, you were in the venue today. It is a polite, respectful crowd. Yep. Everybody on the deck has been polite and respectful. We want the best for everybody, Leah included. But I feel like we're taking something culturally, let's say in the classroom, in the workplace, that would be flat out discrimination and just completely wrong to take a transgender and dismiss them or not have them contribute. But I feel like that is different in sport. We have created men's and women's for a reason. Yep. And this was done back in the 70s because they knew at the time that there was a big difference physiologically. The male, a man changes quite drastically from a woman during puberty. And if we hadn't made these changes, women would have been left behind in sport. Yep. And so that there really does still need to be a distinction. And that's why I say it's more or less kind of black and white in the sporting world, not in recreational sports, not in fun and games with kids. And that's just my opinion. And it's an opinion of a lot of people. And it's not a slam against anybody and who they want to be at all. And I feel that that's where it gets really murky and clouded with a lot of people being angry or frustrated or calling me transphobic or anything like that. And that is, I can't even begin to tell you that's not even my personality or who I am at all. So yeah, it can be kind of frustrating to feel like you have a logical opinion, and a lot of people will want to shoot you down for it.
But it seems like that's what's happening just culturally in our world. That if I don't agree with what you have to say, I'm going to put you in this box of being transphobic. I can't imagine that 99% of the people in there are transphobes. Like you cannot convince me of that whatsoever. And then you're on a college campus all the time. And I know we cover what's happening on college campuses at Turning Point USA. And basically what we want is just representation from both sides. We want to have diversity of thought. Like, let's come to the table and talk about this and not get to this point of, oh, you don't want Leah Thomas in the pool, or you just don't want biological males competing with females. That doesn't make you a transphobe. This makes you want to have integrity and fairness in the sport. But a lot of times conversations are getting squashed, and it's really unfortunate because we're seeing a lot of that happen at college campuses.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you on the pool deck, I've had a lot of pat on the backs and, hey, thank you for speaking up. And, you know, I don't say, well, go on. You speak up too. I mean, you know, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable in that position.
Do you feel like people are uncomfortable speaking because they just don't want to be called those names, be put in that box, and they just don't know or don't really have the idea of how to get out of that transphobe box that people like to put people in?
I think there's probably some of that. I mean, you know, we can say, you know, I don't want to lose my job, or our school has told us, you know, to no comment, and you know, those are real. I think some of it is just a little bit of fear of kind of expressing an opinion and having people, you know, like maybe shout you down or leave nasty messages or something like that. And personally, I can tell you, like, I haven't received anything to my face that has been negative. I've had people try to go to my superiors. I've had nothing but really support, and so I haven't found it to be debilitating for me.
Isn't that just a great reflection of the country that we're in and the culture we're in then, that people are getting silenced? And I know we were talking about that teammate of the Virginia Tech swimmer that was just on the outside looking in to be a part of the finals that were yesterday as we speak right now. And that was the first time I'd seen a collegiate athlete go in front of a camera and speak. And I think that is a total reflection of where we're at right now, where it's like, if you don't agree with this, you got to be silent.
Yeah, I feel like with the college athletes, you know, it's a different story when you're here at the meet. You know, they've got their own job to do, you know, and that's, you know, their heads down, they're training, they're getting themselves prepared, they're being a great teammate to their teammates. You know, speaking out and being kind of in that arena is probably not, you know, probably in their best interest or where they need to be right now. So I understand why a lot of college athletes haven't said much about it. You know, I'm not saying it's the adult's job to do it, but, you know, I think we have to kind of take a balanced, measured approach. Like, what do we feel like we're comfortable saying? Where, you know, and again, my whole premise at the beginning was just, I'm looking for fairness in sport, and in this particular case, swimming. And I think most people, you know, it really is most people, like, particularly here at this venue and in sporting, we see that this is not a fair situation.
And I know this is something I've talked about online too, and just being in the building today, you could just tell the energy just changes. That, like, it's so hyped up, there's big music going on when they're warming up, and then there's other prelims going on, and then watching Leah Thomas get on the pool deck there, and it seems like there's just a silence, and that everybody knows what is about to happen. This biological man is about to beat all these women. And it's not a shocker when Leah Thomas touches the wall first. And then after that, once Leah Thomas is gone, the energy is back up again. And I feel like that's why this aspect of silence is deafening here. You can tell by people not even saying anything at all what they think about the situation.
I mean, you do feel kind of a difference when that heat is up. You know, I mean, we saw it last night. There was, you know, more cheers for the second place finisher in the 500 free than for the champion, and there was polite applause. I mean, it was a great swim. Yep. I can't argue with the performance. But, you know, again, people they're just politely applauding. They are being respectful, but kind of in a way just disagreeing that, is this really the way it should be? And again, I'm going to say this is an NCAA issue, not a transgender, not a Leah Thomas issue. And it's a shame that, the lack of leadership put us in this place right now.
And then how can we make sure that the faces and names and voices of these women that might have just missed the cut or are finishing second that should be in first if Leah Thomas wasn't competing, like how do we make sure that those names and faces are heard and seen more?
I think what I hope is that the NCAA will revisit, their rules and how they want to address these things. And this is more or less a one-time experience. And hopefully future athletes won't have to go through this process. I just hope, the athletes that are on kind of the ones who have missed out getting the opportunity to swim tonight, I'm glad it's not one of mine. I'm not really sure how I'd handle that, but what I feel like, again, what I've said before is, and we learned this as athletes, you want to control and manage what's within your power. Yep. And this is something that is not within their power, and they're just going to have to get up and do their best and learn from it. And if they, they get knocked out, well, hopefully they learn from that experience, that they're going to come back and hopefully perform well in the next race and kind of move on, and maybe they'll be more outspoken or kind of understand what, fairness or lack thereof how it can affect people.
So how do you go about encouraging your athletes, and how would you encourage other coaches to speak to their athletes that might be a little demoralized right now, that might be unbelievably confused or feel like that if they say anything at all that people don't like, that could be the end of their career and they could lose friends and they could lose scholarships? How would you encourage your own athletes and other coaches?
John, that's a good question. You could probably put that to even to Leah Thomas. Again, with the rules that were set up, Leah Thomas Penn made the appeal. The NCAA, based on the way the rules were, was okay to swim. So, same token on Leah's side, I got to imagine there's got to be really hard to focus on what you're doing and really racing, just with kind of being in the center of attention. And I think that, on the opposite side, then the other athletes here, it's just you're going to have to kind of try to zone in on what you can do. I know I talked to the athlete I have here now. We're not swimming the same events, but know that there's going to be a little bit of a spectacle here, and not get lost in that scene, and really, as we say back home and from the commercial, stay in your lane, bro. Let's focus on what you're doing in between those two lane ropes, and make that your priority.
Well, food, it's a huge part of the sports experience. What if you could buy the food you need for your watch party and donate to TPUSA without even leaving your home? No way, John, right? You can do that with Good Ranchers. They sell 100% American meat, and they believe so much in what we're doing right here, right now. They'll donate 50 buckaroos to TPUSA on your behalf when you purchase from them. Good Ranchers delivers steakhouse quality beef, chicken, and seafood right to your door. And with our code TPUSA, that's TPUSA, you can donate $50 to our mission while getting absolutely delicious food. Head on over to goodranchers.com/TPUSA today. Get ribeyes, New York strips, gourmet burgers, and so much more. Order now with promo code TPUSA, and $50 will be donated to our mission of sharing and preserving true American values and making sure men aren't in women's sports. Go to goodranchers.com/TPUSA to get a box today. Once again, use promo code TPUSA at goodranchers.com/TPUSA. Do good while you eat good.
That's why I think it's so important that you're bringing up this aspect of the conversation that's more than Leah Thomas. This is about the other women swimmers that are here, and this is about generations to come. And that's why you kind of hope that, the NCAA is going to look at this situation right here, right now, and hopefully in the off season figure it out. But for you individually,
when people listen to you speak, watch you on television, you're talking to Megyn Kelly, you talk to Swim, it's like, be who you want to be.
Sure, yeah.
Whatever name you want, whatever gender you want, like we're a free country. But when it comes to fairness, that's what it comes down to. It's like, call me a transphobe all you want, but you are the person that's saying, be who you want. But if you're a biological man competing against women in sports, it just comes down to that. It's just not fair.
Yeah, I mean, look how fortunate we are to, in a first world country to, this is an issue that we're dealing with. I want to say it's fortunate for a lot of people in there, but, there's a lot going on out there that we should be so thankful that we are in a free country where if this is who Leah wants to be, like, and I support that. I have, full support of that, and I think most people in the United States do. I think one of the really interesting things, again, this issue, people, talk about dividing people a lot. This issue has brought a lot of people from a lot of different constituencies together, actually. Women who were leaders in creating, more opportunities in Title IX and gender equity, might have really come across and had some battles maybe with some conservatives and some other areas, and they're feeling like they've been left out and kind of pushed aside. And it's just really interesting to see how really it has brought a lot of different groups together, and it really isn't as partisan as we want to make it out to be.
But that's always a convenient thing to do. It's like, oh, this is a left or right issue. And I don't feel like this is a left or right issue at all. And I think the fact that we've talked a little bit more about putting people into boxes, like just because you don't feel like a biological male should be competing with females, that doesn't make you conservative. That just makes you someone that cares about the fairness and integrity of women's sports. And I mean, even yesterday, going back to that, I had a security guard outside. He talked to all of us and was saying, that was the first time I've seen Save Women's Sports and the supporters of Leah Thomas come together and actually have a discussion. Because that was a great view of what our country looks like, is we have this divide. There's literally this walkway and this road, and you got supporters of Leah and people on this side that just want to save women's sports and not supporting Leah being involved in this. It's like, let's bridge that gap. Let's actually talk about this and say it's not about left or right. It's about fairness, and it's about the integrity of the sport. That's it.
Well, it is. It's really interesting to see, when people actually maybe listen to each other a little bit more and just, again, begin to understand maybe where the other person is coming from. And I really have tried to do that. I think one of the things, again, I was probably taken a little bit out of context very early on, is like, there is a place in competitive swimming for everybody, and no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the beautiful thing. Even as a swim coach, I run a program and I call it From Cradle to Grave. I mean, we have a place for everybody from as early in life as possible till, you're ready to kick the bucket. And so, and again, all different ability levels. So that's exactly what we want. This is a lifetime sport. There's so many benefits to competing in the sport, or just the physical fitness side of it. And why would we want to turn anybody away? We just want to create there are rules in sports. I got to follow a lot of. I had to follow rules to get my athlete registered for this meeting. If I messed it up, I was going to be in a lot of trouble. So, you can't have a whole lot of gray area when it comes to your sport specific rules, and that I feel includes your male and female biology. And that's the way it's been. And unless we're going to totally revamp the sport in all sports to be more inclusive in that way, which I guess is an option. But this is the way it is right now. And so I feel like in this particular case, kind of on a transgender side, there has to be an adaptation. Like, 3 years as a male competitive athlete in collegiate college, and then 2 years later as a female is, again, probably has not been the best use of rules, or just a demonstration of the archaic rule system that's there.
Because everybody too, it's like we can complain till we're blue in the face about things that we don't like, but you got to be solution oriented. So everybody wants to know. It's like there's a lot of people I think that are in the boat that they don't think this is right, but it's all about like, well, what's the next step? What's the solution? And it seems like right now what the NCAA is doing is that there's governing bodies. They've talked about a sport by sport approach, and then what happens when you go from college to the next level? It's like, well, what are their rules? And then there's all this whole, well, it's testosterone level, and then you go to the IOC and they don't really have rules set in place at all. So I feel like everyone's just looking for solutions. I think you can easily dumb it down to, you don't think that men should be competing with women, but it's already happening now, and there's got to be a process to understand how do we go about fixing this. What's the solution?
Yeah, and that just goes back to what I said earlier. Is we're so driven kind of in the culture to be accepting and things like that, and we are. That's the beautiful thing here about the United States, but we can't blanket that across the board for everything. And in sport, again, it's just different. And I mean, the safety, the fairness, just the opportunities for biological women will be affected and can be affected. They are right here, unless we are more steadfast or hard and fast on kind of how we're going to accommodate and adapt to bring these other athletes into it.
So when people say there should maybe be just a transgender category, or there should just be an open division or something, what do you think could be done here for someone like Leah? That's like, I feel like I'm a woman now, but like biologically you are a man. So like, how do you go about that?
I don't know if that's my department right now. I'm a coach, and what I see every day and what I work with, and I don't know if I'm that decision maker or problem solver. I mean, I guess I have ideas, but I think there's a lot of people out there who would be very much more qualified to determine, what is how sport, in our case swimming or any other sport, should be adjusted, or if it even needs to be at all, or what it takes to compete in one category. I mean, look at sports that have weight categories. Look at sports that, there's just all sorts of different ways it's being done right now. I don't know if swimming needs to look at those things, but again, the way we are aligned right now as a sport and how we compete, this is kind of an invasion, I guess I would say, where, if we were rec swimming, and we're just getting up, racing, having some fun, and there's not a whole lot riding on it. Heck, I do it. We've done it at practice. Yeah. I run a masters meet. It's men and women in the same heats. It's based on time. I mean, there's all sorts of great ways to bring everybody together. I just don't know if this at the national championships is the best place to adjust and change our culture.
Couple more questions for you, because we don't want to keep you too long. I know it's chilly out here. Like, this weather is still wild to me. I don't know if people can see the lightning behind us here. But I think an interesting part of your story, though, is you've spoken out, but you haven't gotten canceled. You haven't had your bio erased from the school website. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that disagree with you. You got plenty of support here. There are people coming up. But I think it's got to be encouraging to people to hear what you have to say. It's like, hey, I'm just talking about from a sports perspective here. I don't think this is fair. And also, if you speak up, you're not going to get canceled for it. You're maybe going to get some backlash online, but you can speak your mind, and it can lead to more discussion.
Well, hopefully it leads to more people just talking about it or discussing it rationally. I feel really fortunate. I'm at Rice University is I mean, it's an elite private school. I mean, among one of the best in the world. And no, not everybody has appreciated what I've said initially. Again, did everybody hear every word I said? But my administration has been supportive of me in that, you know, it's my free speech. Yep. And, you know, I really appreciate that. And you know, I've been at Rice for 20 years, and I think you kind of have, I'm not going to say you have to know your boundaries, but I felt like I was in a position where at Rice, you know, as long as I'm being respectful and trying to, you know, share some discourse and opinions that are not, you know, hurting people, that would be okay. And it has been. And again, not everybody at Rice has valued what I've said, and I get that. You know, and I've been wide open that I would love to talk to anybody who doesn't agree with me, and you know, that's what we'd be.
Have people taken you up on that offer at all?
You know, I haven't so much with students, and I understand. I mean, I think, you know, think of it in terms of like someone who would maybe perceived with some power versus a student. And again, I can totally understand why someone would not be comfortable wanting to be in a conversation with me over that. And again, if it's a really emotional, sensitive issue to you, you know, I respect that. But I feel like our school paper's been relatively fair to anything I've had to say. You know, my administration has been supportive. We've actually, just like you said, we've had students initially say, hey, you have a lot more backing than you know, or that, but we're just kind of staying quiet. And over 1 week to the next, as things kind of continued on, we've actually had a number of students speak up. Wow. So honestly, in our little bubble at Rice, there has been a little bit of more discourse. So, yeah, you know, I think speaking your mind, but doing it respectfully. Let's face it, there's a lot of value in it that in this day and age we're probably shying away from, because you've got to be either right or left, or, you know, up or down, or whatever, and there's nothing in between. And honestly, in this particular issue, we found a whole lot more people are probably in the middle of this fight than on either extreme.
How do you think history's going to remember these championships? So from years from now, maybe a couple decades or so, how will this be remembered?
Well, you know, I think my hope is that the biological women's side, that this kind of confirmed why we need to kind of have current rules, and it you know, kind of brought out like why we have separated and why we've created these opportunities for women, and then hopefully just on the other side, maybe there's discourse has become a little more open, and we can have some differences where what we do socially and what we believe is acceptable, where again, I think our crowd here has been very respectful. Yep. And what we also feel is kind of where we have to have more, you know, black and white rules. It's just the term I'll use on that, you know, but you know, that to create fairness, and this was kind of the epicenter of that, and hopefully we're bigger, better, and benefiting more later on from it.
Final question for you: if you could sit down with top dogs at the NCAA and Leah Thomas in what room, what would you say to the NCAA, and what would you say to Leah Thomas?
Everything we've talked about. Again, you know, to Leah Thomas, the great thing again here is, you know, if this is who you want to be, and this is your authentic self, then that is exactly what we all want for each other. And really, if the bravery just to be in that place, you know, there's a lot of admiration, and I think people in the crowd there, you know, if we can get past that it's wrong and this isn't right, there's a lot of admiration for anybody who's brave enough to kind of be in that position. To the NCAA again, it's just like, I hate, this has been so bastard, but let's follow the science. and I mean,
we got a dollar for every single time we heard that.
But you know, when the original rules were pretty much put in place in 2011, there's a plethora of information, not just on transgender changes from a transgender woman or a trans man and how much they change, and and how much their body is mitigated, but also just really the differences again between the male and female biology, that there's not a whole lot of real argument. And people will still come up and tell me that there's been a lot of studies showing you're wrong and there's not that many differences. And I don't know what studies they're looking at, but I can tell you from experience standing on the deck and coaching men and women, and there are differences, and they're profound.
Well, I hope people hear your heart behind this whole thing too. And I think hopefully people, when we speak of courage, you've been unbelievably courageous throughout this whole time speaking up about this. And people can't put you in a specific box. I feel like that's what maybe frustrates people, is like, well, this guy's saying that Leah can be who you want, but knowing that like I still will stand against this when it comes to competing in women's swimming. Sure. And then knowing that you want to have discussions too. And I hope that's what I've noticed here. There's been so many discussions with people that are like, I don't know if I really align conservative or I'd really be on the left, but we're agreeing with things. And I think that's the beauty of America. And hopefully we find a solution here, and the NCAA can look at this and understand and have a discussion themselves, and people can see you for who you are, not just a clip here and there, not just a soundbite here and there, but like hear your heart behind this kind of stuff. And I think hopefully we can get back to that, because I think that's another beauty of America.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of us in this day and age are just living on some sound bites and anonymous notes on Twitter and that, and we've really lost kind of the opportunity to exchange information, ideas, and there's probably more in common out there with a lot of these athletes and Leah than what the media and the outside world is going to give us all credit for.
Amen to that. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cawthorn has spilled some of the most 5 orange juicy tea on DC politics I think I've ever heard, and it's not for little ears. Do you remember Taylor Nolan from Bachelor Nation? She's right up there for me with Rachel Lindsay. Wait till you hear what she said about Slapgate. One of the most famous horror villains of all time is getting a spin-off show on HBO. Bruce Willis has some sad news for us, and I'll tell you what happened this week in pop culture history with the Pop Culture Rewind. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Poplitics. You know conservative Congressman Madison Cawthorn from South Carolina, right? He was asked how realistic the TV show House of Cards was in how they depict what it's like working in Washington, D.C. on the Warrior Poet Society podcast. And what he says here is probably the most 5 orange juicy thing you'll hear all year.
The only thing that's not accurate in that show is that you could never get a piece of legislation about education passed that quickly.
And everything else is good.
Aside from that, I mean, the sexual perversion that goes on in Washington, I mean, being kind of a young guy in Washington, with the average age is probably 60 or 70, and I look at all these people, a lot of them that I've looked up to through my life. I've always paid attention to politics, guys that, then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, well, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to? Yeah. And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Yeah. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you. And it's like, wow, this is wild. And then there's also kind of the whole espionage aspect of what goes on in Washington of, so many people trade in secrets, and there's a currency to secrets. And so it's wild. And then, there's members of the media, the journalists, who kind of will keep nasty stories about you or about other people on a shelf. And then if you're about to kind of speak out against something they don't want you to, they'll come out and say, well, we're about to drop the story of when, 17 years ago you did X, Y, and Z. And you don't want us to drop that story, do you? So we're going to bully you back into this position.
Whoa, right? Well, Congressman Cawthorn sharing these anecdotes has pissed off a lot of powerful people because they don't want you and I to know what really goes on in the swamp.
And in your heart, you know I'm right.
According to The Hill, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy pledged to speak to Representative Cawthorn about his allegation that people in Washington, D.C. have invited him to orgies and done cocaine in front of him after members expressed frustration with the comments. The Hill goes on to say Representative Steve Womack stood up in a House conference meeting on Tuesday to address the comment, according to a source in the room. Other members also expressed that they were upset at Cawthorn's allegations.
Of all the things I hold in high regard, rules are not one of them.
McCarthy said that he would have a chat with Congressman Cawthorn about the racy remarks. I believe Madison. Do you?
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
There are 3 people from Bachelor Nation I loathe. Rachel Lindsay, Becca Martinez, and Taylor Nolan. They win! I don't follow any of them anymore because I cannot stand them and I think they're all racist, terrible people. Case in point, Taylor Nolan's take on Slapgate.
Why what happened at the Oscars is not something white people need to speak on right away. There is so much nuance and complexity and layers that you will not be able to understand through your white experience without education and listening to specifically Black women, which we all know many people don't. So when you share your perspective or your education on what you perceive to have happened last night, it's coming through your white lens, which has you on a place of moral high ground, lacks understanding of Black trauma, has such an emphasis on this binary of who is good or who is bad, centers violence, only actually continues to minimize Black women and their pain, and most annoyingly, continues to center yourself on that really just is not your business. So just take some time, take a minute. You don't have to respond right away. Really try and look at the entire situation before you speak on the shiny, easy grab. Because what you fail to see through your white lens was the actual violence occurring. The continued violence that is ableism and that is misogynoir. The continued violence that is white supremacy.
I don't know about you, but after that word salad, I'm stuffed. Probably won't even need to take a lunch break today.
Ron, would you like some salad? Since I am not a rabbit, no, I do not.
Can you imagine spending any amount of time with her just trying to do normal friend things? You go to an ice cream shop and she's like, actually, I find it incredibly privileged that as a white person, you would order chocolate ice cream. I know through your white lens you see nothing wrong with that, but by ordering that, you fail to see and hear the screams of Black people from the 1600s begging you to stop.
2 scoops, sir?
2, make it 3. I'm not driving.
Speaking of the slap, a little update. Chris Rock's brother has been replying to people on Twitter saying that no one from the Smith family has reached out to apologize to Chris and that when P. Diddy said that they worked it out backstage, he was lying. Will has disabled comments on his apology post, and word on the street is everyone and their mother hates Will Smith and he destroyed his entire reputation and career in 30 seconds.
Pretend the whole thing never happened. Never happened.
One of the scariest movie monsters ever is coming soon to your TV in a new spin-off show. It's Pennywise the Clown is about to get his own origin series that I guess is going to tell the story of how he became, well, it.
Hi.
Variety reported that the show will be called Welcome to Derry and will lead up to the events of It Part 1, the 2017 film based on the Stephen King horror novel. What do you think? You gonna crawl into a sewer anytime soon?
I have chicken nuggets down here.
Breaking news that's actually very sad. Legendary actor Bruce Willis, who starred in movies like Die Hard and Pulp Fiction, has been diagnosed with aphasia, according to his family. Aphasia is apparently a condition that can impact an individual's ability to write, speak, and understand language. His family stated that the actor will be stepping away from the career that has meant so much to him. This is just, I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking, and it always really is shocking when faces that we're so used to seeing on screens have news like this, because it reminds us that celebrities, at the end of the day, are just people who go through very real issues like you and I. Just thinking about Bruce, his family, his daughters, and I thought it was really sweet that Demi Moore even posted a tribute.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
You know what time it is? Pop Culture Rewind. This week in 1981, President Ronald Reagan was shot in the chest outside a Washington, D.C. hotel by John Hinckley Jr. He later told his wife, Nancy, "Honey, I forgot to duck."
Reagan smash! Reagan smash!
This week in 1995, the beautiful and super talented Selena was murdered by her manager in Texas. And in 2001 this week, The Fairly Odd Parents premiered on Nickelodeon. Hear me out. Wanda is the only TV personality who can pull off pink hair.
Woo! Shiny teeth and me. Shiny teeth and me.
And that's what happened this week in pop culture history. Tonight at 9 p.m. Pacific and midnight Eastern, a brand new episode of The Spillover will be out. I will be talking to someone involved in one of the biggest con schemes and true crime stories of all time that has resulted in one of the most popular podcasts ever and a TV show based on what happened to her family. Can you guess who it is? Heart this episode of Politics. Let me know in the comments if you think Congressman Cawthorn is telling the truth about DC. Also, of course, your predictions on who the guest is going to be in The Spillover tonight. Post this episode to your story. Tell people the tea is absolutely piping, and please tap the save button. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. This is the last ever Politics show on the original set. I'm honestly so sad, but it's time. It's time. I'm so excited that we're growing, and tomorrow's episode is going to be on another set just in the meantime, and then it will be Tuesday that you will get to see the brand new Politics set, because Friday I'm going to be speaking at Kansas State, so there will be no episode on Monday. That was very confusing. Hopefully you got all that. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Politics. Support Politics, the first ever conservative pop culture daily show, by subscribing to our channel, turning on notifications, and of course, hitting the thumbs up. Also, our main home is on Instagram. Seriously, just trust me, that's where the real magic happens. Follow us there at Politics.